Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if female Naruto married with Sasuke and get pregnant. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. It was a beautiful sunny day. Luckily less hot than 3 days ago, but still hot all the same. It was a perfect day to hang out and just have fun. Team 7 opted to train, so they were in their usual spot at the training grounds. Each one was working alone, no sparring for today. Haruno Sakura was reading. It was too hot to do any physical effort according to her. She chose to read a medical book that was recommended by Tsunade. Uzumaki Naruto on the other hand didn't mind the heat at all. Training is important to become a powerful ninja, and it's the only way to reach your goal, to be the best Hokage ever, as well as to be acknowledged by the villagers, of course. Being a girl wasn't really helping. She didn't have the same musculature as a guy, so she needed to put up more effort, but that doesn't mean that women are weak. Look at Tsunade and they say that to her face to get it proven. However, about Naruto. Unlike Sakura, she didn't have a perfect control over her chakra. She had no talent to become a medic nin. Besides, she liked to fight and use her body. It gave her those adrenaline kicks she craved so much for. Why? No idea. The last member of Team 7, Uchiha Sasuke, was meditating, protected from the burning sun by a tree's shadow. If it wasn't for the chakra halo surrounding him, he could be mistaken for being asleep. His surroundings were very tranquil. The small sounds of the leaves being blown by the wind, and the beautiful songs of chaffinches built a peaceful atmosphere. Even Naruto's kicks, pants and occasional curses weren't disturbing at all. When lunchtime came, Sakura got up, brushed off the dust on her black skirt and waved her teammates off, ready to go to the Hokage Tower. "Well, I'm off. I promised Tsunade to come after lunch break," she said, waiting for Sasuke to reply, but he didn't even acknowledge her presence. She frowned and then looked over at Naruto, who was still trying to beat a log to death. Good luck on that. And then looked back at Sasuke. She didn't really want to let Sasuke-kun alone with Naruto, but she knew that her female teammate wasn't going to do anything stupid. For some reason, whenever she left the two of them alone and later on returned, they were in a fight, spitting profanities at each other. Haruno Sakura, young Kunoichi of 16 years, was not the most beautiful girl in Konoha, but she stood out with her intelligence, her frightening strength, her fists being more destructive than a man's, and her amazing skills in medical-oriented jutsu, made her a very talented ninja in general, and as many know, true beauty is not only outer appearance. She was Tsunade's apprentice and seemed to be doing just as well as her own sensei. Like every healthy teenager girl, Sakura Haruno liked to take care of her appearance, and of course she had a crush on a certain someone, even though her feelings had changed since younger years. That someone was Sasuke Uchiha, her male teammate, the one who'd been her love at first sight. She was still showing affection for the Uchiha because, sure, he was attractive and all, and who was she to ignore that? But recently she discovered that it wasn't that much of a crush anymore. She had more sincere feelings for the Uchiha. She'd only realized them after spending time with the man. She got to know him personally, instead of only judging by appearance. She was willing to let him love someone else. However, it didn't mean she wouldn't sincerely try to win him over. The pinkette smiled and she remembered everything she'd done during her younger years. She'd tried everything to win Sasuke's heart because of a mere crush, but the young Uchiha boy didn't care about her as a potential girlfriend. So, back when she was 15, Sakura had decided to stop bothering the guy and let him be. He wasn't interested in girls as it seemed, and when the time comes, he'll open his eyes and find a person he holds close to his heart, hoping that said person will be her. Sakura's smile widened as she realized how stupid she'd been. She couldn't understand what was wrong with her back then. She had seen herself as cute, intelligent and beautiful, so why wouldn't Sasuke love her? She was Sasuke's closest girlfriend, for heaven's sake. Naruto didn't count. She was like a boy anyway. But she'd also been very clingy, loud and obstinate. You name it, she sighed. As the woman turned her back on her female and walked out from the training grounds, she passed Sasuke, still engrossed by his meditation, and Naruto. The blonde was working her abs, and she could even hear Naruto mutter to herself, 583, 584, 585. That girl amazed her, always overdoing herself. She was really powerful already, but to herself it was nowhere near enough. She'd be the death or herself. She made a grimace when she saw Naruto's disgraceful figure. She was sweating too much. My god, she must be stinking like Guy-sensei after 500 laps around Konoha on one hand. And she spreads her legs like a guy. Sakura was always wondering if that girl was a lesbian, especially when she asked Sakura to have lunch at Ichiraku with her. She wondered what women was Naruto's type. She shrugged and then left the field. 10 minutes after Sakura's departure, Sasuke was disturbed by a loud growl. He frowned and opened slightly his left eye. He noticed that Naruto was finished. She was sprawled all over the ground caressing her loud and hungry stomach with bruised fists. He smirked. So loud, even with her mouth shut, her stomach can't stand the silence and takes over. It didn't matter to the Raven though. For some reason, Sasuke found Naruto's loudness more amusing than annoying. Hey Sasuke, I'm hungry. I'm going to have lunch by the lake, you coming? Naruto screamed from the other side of the field and then smiled at Sasuke waiting for his reply. You're so loud, Dobi, was Sasuke's reply while getting up. She's never tired, I wish I had her stamina. But if it's the reason for her being so loud, no thanks, I don't need it. Don't call me Dobi, Teme. She yelled at him, aiming a punch straight to his face. Sasuke saw it coming and blocked it with his left arm. He tried to twist her right arm behind her back, but she bent down and tried to kick his ankles to trip him. He jumped and skillfully landed 10 feet away from her. He was smirking, his expression as composed as ever. He was neither panting nor sweating, as if he hadn't lifted a single finger. After all, it was like a game for them. Another angry growl reminded them that they were going to have lunch. Naruto grinned sheepishly, rubbing the back of her head. As nice as it sounds to kick your ass, Teme, I'm off. I'm too hungry to take care of your bastard attitude right now. Let's have lunch. I'm going to D-IE if I don't have my ramen soon. She shouted the last sentence dramatically. Like you can actually beat anyone in a spar, let alone me, Dobi. Don't be so full of yourself. Sasuke replied with a superior tone to his voice that made Naruto arch a brow. He smirked as he noticed that she was getting pissed. He loved to get a reaction out of her. It was fun. Teme, of course I can kick your ass anytime I want to, you bastard. She retorted childishly and folded her arms over her chest. Her face flushed from anger. Sasuke knew how to push her buttons and he was doing it very well. Guess Sakura was right about the two of them always ending up fighting. They kept bickering the whole way to the lake. When they'd reached their destination, Naruto opened her bag. It was full of instant ramen cups. There were 3 cups but only 1 bottle of water. Hopeless, she really eats nothing other than ramen, and she drinks way too little. She going to get dehydrated, Sasuke thought, making a disgusted face. He would never understand his teammates' tastes. Well, it didn't matter, he wasn't the one to eat it. He looked away from the sickening view of Naruto's eating habits. He opened his own, more appealing, bento. It was a bento filled with onigiri, but there was also a healthy salad full of tomatoes present. He smiled. His mother always knew how to prepare and decorate his bento. Knowing her son's taste, there was more tomatoes than lettuce. He took a first and tiny bit, and moaned mentally. His mother was the best. You can feel all the kindness and love in her cooking. It made him all warm inside. He was the youngest son of the head family, always shadowed by his older brother, Itachi, the genius of the Uchiha clan. A real prodigy, cherished and admired by everyone. Makoto Uchiha, Sasuke's mother, was the only person to care about him. She kept saying that Fugaku, Sasuke's, oh so wonderful, father, loved him and cared about him, but since his father had never showed it, even once, during the 16 years of his existence, he never believed her. Now, he didn't care about his cold father and cocky brother, he had his mother and the rest doesn't matter for him. One day, he'd show them all that he was worthy of being an Uchiha. He always wondered how his mother was putting up with his father, she was too kind and deserved so much better than that man. That thought made him think about the girls tailing the Uchiha like they can bear living with them, especially the sons of the head family. They're only looking for wealth and society status, plain stupid, like we're going to pick them, he thought. Honestly though, he didn't want to pick just any girl, especially not one of his fangirls. They were bothersome, and as an Uchiha, intelligent, powerful, graceful and beautiful, he'd have to have a wife of high standards to make sure his children would have good blood. Unfortunately, he hadn't met a girl that could become a potential wife. A surprisingly loud slurp disturbed Sasuke's thought. You know, Hui Sasuke? Naruto asked him with her mouth full with ramen, a noodle hanging out from the right corner of her mouth. I mean, are you not hungry? She asked again after catching that naughty noodle with her skillful tongue. Sasuke's face twisted in disgust looking at his teammate's hand wiping the ramen sauce away with her sleeve. His stomach flipped. Kami, you're disgusting, he said and looked back at his lunch and understood why his teammate asked him if he wasn't hungry anymore. He'd eaten less than half his lunch. Are you sick? You're not feeling good? She insisted, putting her wrist on Sasuke's forehead to check his temperature. The raven flinched at the contact and pushed her hand away. Don't touch me with your dirty hand, he hissed harshly, glaring at her. Tisk, stuck up Teme, she said, retreating her hand, not impressed by the glare one bit. You weren't eating, I was just checking your temperature, you ungrateful bastard, she whispered the last part. She was truly worried actually. The raven was in deep thought, as if he was trying to figure something out. Sasuke looked back at Naruto, of course he caught the last part, and it made him feel a bit guilty. She looked really worried about him. Naruto was the only girl in Konoha to be sincere with him. She didn't have a crush on him, and it reassured him a lot. Well, the girl not only acted like a boy, but she also kicked like a boy, though, he would never admit that out loud. She never held back when they're sparring. That's why he never sparred with Sakura, she always holds back unconsciously. He knew that she's very strong, but she never challenged him, unlike Naruto. The Uchiha was the only boy in the Rookie 9 to be stuck with two girls in his team. He'd been scared as hell to have two fangirls as teammates. He'd never surpass his brother if his teammates are useless during training and missions, but fortunately for him, after their first training as Team 7, 4 years ago, he was relieved to find out that one of his teammates was a tomboy, ready to dirty her clothes and kick some ass anytime. And, she didn't have a crush on him. On the contrary, the girl seemed to hate his guts. Besides, Naruto was quite amusing. She always made a fool of herself, especially when she tried to kick his ass as she put it. Oi, Earth to Sasuke, Earth to Sasuke. Naruto screamed at his face and waved a slender hand in front of said face. Shut up, Dobie, he said and blinked. He couldn't help but notice that her knuckles were still bruised. However, he was more distracted by the fact that her face was less than a foot away from his. Back off, Uzumaki, he suddenly said and pushed her away roughly, by the shoulders. Don't you know what personal space means? Fuck you asshole? You weren't replying. What's crawled up your ass today? She asked and chuckled. Her chuckles only increased as she noticed that the Uchiha didn't approve of her vocabulary. You always have something crawled up your ass anyway, but today must be something really uncomfortable, maybe a dead animal rotting up there? There was no need to give a proper reply to such a question. Before they could begin another round of bickering, they sensed Sakura's presence. Naruto grinned and turned to look at Sakura with a wide grin. Sakura-chan, she shouted waving to her friend. The old hag let you leave early. You came to have lunch with us? She asked hoping that her answer would be a yes. No, Baka, she growled glaring at her stupid teammate. We have a mission. Hokage-sama is waiting for us, she said looking at Sasuke who nodded and went to pick up his bento and bag. Naruto followed his lead and they headed to the Hokage Tower wondering what this new mission was. Sakura-chan, did Ba-chan tell you what this mission is about? Naruto asked bouncing before Sakura's face like an excited puppy. Said Pink Cat pushed her away from her body. Stop jumping like a child Naruto. And no, she didn't explain anything about the mission. She only asked me to come and get you, she answered with her eyes rolling. The blonde had been asking the same question several times now, getting the same answer every time as well. Wish it's a high-ranked mission. We haven't had an exciting mission for ages. No one replied, but they all agreed with her. They'd been given mostly C and B ranked missions if anything, but they shouldn't complain really. It wasn't a D-ranked one, however, it wasn't A ranked either. When they reached the Hokage Tower, they found Shizune waiting for them. She rushed them into Tsunade's office at once, muttering about being late and them being out of sake. Sasuke nodded to Tsunade while Naruto chose to grade her, warmly. Oi, Ba-chan, you're as grumpy as ever I see, she said with a wide grin and put her hands in the front of her pants, rolling on her heels to get a movement going. It couldn't be healthy to be this hyper all the time. Brat, You're as disrespectful as ever. You better shut up or you'll kiss the mission goodbye. Tsunade bit back and smirked when she saw Naruto's pout, a really cute expression by the way. It was their weird way to welcome each other, even if the words were sometimes harsh. They both knew that they meant something kinder and warmer. I have a mission for you, she said and then began to explain what Team 8 had already found. I want you to capture these mercenaries. Iwagakure is keeping an eye on them already but they will need some Konoha shinobi to take on Ishigakure. We know for sure that they're still in that village and you need to find them. You must infiltrate the village and investigate to identify the boss of this organization. We believe he's in there, however, if he isn't, try and gather as much information as possible, she explained and began to clarify their objectives. You want us to go undercover? Naruto asked incredulously. Yes, Tsunade replied even if it wasn't really necessary, but it was a perfect transition, and we've already prepared your covers. We? Sasuke asked raising his eyebrow. Yes, we, meaning me and Team 8. They advised me since they were in contact with the villagers. None of the members from Team 7 answered her. Instead, they looked at each other quizzically, wondering what the heck Tsunade had prepared for them. What the hell Ba-chan? Spit it out already, we don't have the whole day. Naruto shouted, annoyed with Tsunade's silence. Is it something disgusting or degrading? She asked skeptically. She didn't trust Tsunade at all when it came to making covers. Shut up, Naruto. Don't yell at Tsunade-sama. Sakura lectured her teammate holding back her fist from crashing into Naruto's thick skull. That girl is really getting on my nerves. Very well, listen. Team 7 your mission is to capture a group of mercenaries hiding in Ishi. Sasuke and Naruto, you're a married couple. Naruto, you're pregnant, and Sakura, you're her personal doctor, and finally, she said it. She was met with complete silence. What? They all screamed, including the composed Uchiha, who lost his composure hearing Tsunade's plan. He was supposed to be married to Naruto, who in turn was supposed to be pregnant with their child. Are you senile, Ba-chan? You need to go check your brain and make sure you're getting enough oxygen. Me? Pregnant? Out of everything. And married. Naruto yelled. Why am I the one who has to be the bastard's wife while it's Sakura-chan who has been crushing on him since years back? She'd make it a hell of a lot more believable thanks to that. Yeah, Sakura screamed agreeing with Naruto for once. Why do we have to do that? We can be siblings, can't we? Or friends or something. She tried miserably to get Tsunade to change her mind about this. As his two teammates were yelling at the oldest woman in the room, the Raven's mind was spinning like crazy. Sasuke didn't want to be anyone's husband, not Naruto's and absolutely not Sakura's. She would take advantage of the situation. He shuddered, like hell he'll play that role. Shut up, both of you. Tsunade knew that they were going to disagree with her. She sighed and started to explain her choice to them. First, I'm the Hokage here and I chose whoever I see suitable for this mission. You don't have the right to complain. She spat glaring at Naruto who was about to protest again. Let me finish, you brat. Second, I didn't choose you randomly, she said and sighed. She'd been prepared for Naruto to say all these things, but damn, the blonde had to let her explain her reasoning. I explained already that ninjas aren't allowed in Ishigakure, that's why you need to go undercover. Sakura, your medical skills will allow you to pass as a doctor and be in contact with lots of villagers. They'll trust you easily and it's going to help with the investigation. Sakura nodded showing her understanding, you're good in genjutsu. I need to know what's behind that tunnel as well, so when you're not around Naruto or Sasuke you can do pretty much anything to get more information about the tunnel, the people in the village, the actual organization etc. Sakura nodded before Tsunade proceeded and turned to the Raven. Sasuke, you fit with the profile set by Team 8. You must act warmer around your wife, though. The mercenaries are recruiting strong and cold men, so for the meantime, you should make sure you catch their interest by acting cold. Naruto couldn't help but snicker at that, gaining a heated glare from a fuming Tsunade and Sakura. If we find it necessary to get information from the inside, you may be a candidate, but not yet. Keep that in mind. Naruto snorted as she heard this and arched a brow at the Raven male beside her. The Godem sighed, getting tired of being interrupted, but she went on. Must get it over with, she thought. You must look like a very protective father and husband toward Naruto. We don't know if it's really an important characteristic but we have to give it a go. Sasuke nodded, expressing his understanding and determination. Now to Naruto, she thought, looking at the blonde skeptical ninja. Actually, brat, your act must be perfect. You're the one who's going to make them less suspicious. Said blonde female arched both brows at this, and put her hands on her hips. Yes, I said, less, 'cause we know for sure that they're going to suspect you. As a housewife, you'll be wandering around a lot. Plus, a pregnant woman is respected and trustworthy. Make friends and make them spit out what they know. I'm sure that there's at least someone who will notice that something is off, but as long as you act like you don't care about that, you'll most likely not blow your cover. Also, use your frogs to send me your report once a week. I need to inform Sanagakure and Iwagakure about everything. Naruto looked at Tsunade, still not getting the married part of the plan. That's good and all, Ba-chan, but why do we have to act like a married couple? Sure, I can understand that a pregnant woman will be less suspicious than just a normal woman. But why can't, for an example, I and Sakura be siblings, and then Sasuke is just a friend of ours, helping out, you know? For me and Sasuke to actually act as a married couple is a lot to ask for, Ba-chan, she said. She was not stupid. She knew that they can perfectly pass as friends or siblings. Her teammates were actually thinking the same thing. The Godem sighed for the nth time that day, wondering why the hell she was answering their questions. Ishigakure is a very peaceful village and they want to keep it that way. A bunch of adolescents is not allowed in the village without their parents. Even if you introduce yourselves as brother and sisters etc., the absence of adults will make you look suspicious. You could pass for people in their 20s, without the need of adults, but it's a high risk to take. For them you're just troublemakers. That's the same if you tell them that you're orphans. Even if they allow you into the village, they'll keep an eye on you. They won't allow the hormones bags that you are to move freely around the village, and thereby you won't be able to investigate properly. She calmly added, listen, we're discussing a very serious matter, an A-ranked mission. You don't have the right to fail. It could cost you more than just your lives. Of course, we know that it's serious, said the blonde Kunoichi with a pouting lower lip. We're taking it extremely serious. I just can't understand why it has to be I don't think so, brat. Tsunade interrupted the blonde, getting really pissed off. Hokage-sama, Sasuke spoke calmly. You mean that if we act like a married couple, awaiting their firstborn, we will look more mature even if we're still young? Said Hokage, smirked and nodded. Exactly. That's one of the pros about this, among other things. That's the worst plan I ever heard, Ba-chan, Naruto shouted, crossing her arms over her chest. If I'm to play pregnant there will be even more trouble than if we were civilians searching for shelter, or something. Like, how the hell am I even going to appear pregnant? Brat, you're really an idiot. Don't forget to act mature too, snapped a very angry Tsunade. She was really on the verge of killing a certain brat. I'm mature, Naruto replied, stomping her foot childishly and glaring at the old hag. I can take this seriously, the blonde continued and emphasized every word to prove her point. Tsunade smirked. Could have fooled me, she said and smirked as the blonde glared at her. Hokage-sama, I'm sorry but I don't agree with you. Naruto will surely blow up our cover if she's got this motivation. She believes we're going to fail, so thereby we'll most likely going to fail. Sakura said as she couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't let this chance pass. This mission was not only an A-ranked one, but also an opportunity for her to prove her skills. She knew that a lot of people were looking down on her because of Sasuke and Naruto being on her team. Those two were very powerful when they wanted to be, and she was seen as weak in comparison. Naruto is just not wife and mother material, she added, pointing at Naruto almost disgustingly. She doesn't know what it's like to be a woman, let alone a mother. She'd never be a good mother, she concluded confidently, without really thinking. As she realized her mistake, she blushed and looked down at the floor, inspecting the dirt down there. For a brief moment, everyone in the room went silent, stunned to hear what Sakura had just said. Naruto froze from shock and hurt. Even though she may not act like it, she wanted to be a mother someday, so for her own teammate to say that hurt more than just a little. Sasuke's face was emotionless, but you could see the surprise in his eyes. Tsunade raised a blonde eyebrow, wondering if she really heard what she thought she had heard. Did she just insult her friend about being a horrible mother? She then looked at Naruto and what she saw broke her heart. The young Kunoichi held hurt in her eyes. How could Sakura, her own friend and teammate, say something like that. So that's what she thinks about her. She wasn't feminine alright, but that doesn't mean that she'll be a bad mother. Naruto lowered her eyes, then composed herself and looked up with determination. Of course, I'm a woman, not a very feminine one, I know, but I can be a mother. I always wanted to have children, lots and lots of children, to pamper and love. I don't think that anyone can say that they're going to be either the best or worst mother in the world, before giving it a try, she said, making eye contact with Sakura. She was hurt but hid it quite well. She always wanted to have a family. She never was a fan of sappy romance crap or anything, but she always dreamed of building her own family. So no one, not even Sakura, would make her doubt herself. The pink-haired Kunoichi snickered at that. She knew that the blonde was right about that statement, but it did not help the fact that she didn't look like a proper mother. You don't look feminine, so you don't inspire trustworthiness if you want to pass as a carrying wife and a good mother. Sakura didn't want to hurt her teammate, they were friends after all, even if said friend was really annoying. At Naruto's crestfallen look she added, I'm not talking about you personally, Baka. I'm talking about the mission and the way you look. You've got to change your appearance before we go on this, and really, you've got to gain some weight and curves if you want to look more like a woman. You're as plain as a man. Tsunade smiled, so nothing to worry about, that's a relief. Sakura had a point though. The orange jumpsuit that Naruto kept wearing from time to time made her look like an irresponsible tomboy, not really a ladylike outfit to wear for a respected wife and mother in a conservative-like village. Same thing about her body figure. That's why I think, Hokage-sama, that I should be the one to be Sasuke-kun's wife instead. I'm not trying to sound egoistic or something, but for Naruto to change that much and keep an act for months to come, is quite a lot to take all at once. Sasuke mentally groaned at this. Yes, he knew that Sakura was better compared to a few years ago, but still. Naruto is better, at least she wouldn't try to flirt with me during the mission. That's enough, Sakura. It's final. Naruto will be the pregnant wife. She doesn't know medical ninjutsu like you do, so thereby you've got to be the doctor, Tsunade said, glaring at her apprentice. But I have to agree with Sakura. Naruto, you must work on your appearance. I've never seen you in a dress, a tank top, or with your hair in a hairstyle. Try and get some new clothes and ask for help when it comes to the hair. Fine then, I can do this. There's nothing Uzumaki Naruto can't do. I'll show you, Ba-chan. I can be very convincing, even if it's with a cold bastard like Sasuke, Naruto shouted at the blonde woman before her. She was going to pull this off real nicely. She'd show them that she could be a good mother. She swallowed. The word, mother, was foreign to her, but somehow she was starting to love it. Maybe it could be another goal in her life? To have children, and a family. Good. I need to tell you one more thing before you go. They frowned, waiting for Tsunade to explain the rest of the mission. I don't know if they're going to check Naruto or not. If another doctor would check you, he'll learn that you're not pregnant, so I've been thinking a lot about how you could appear pregnant. Yeah, that makes sense. Why are you so obsessed with the pregnant part anyway? Naruto asked, trying desperately to ease her worry. Well, being Sasuke's wife is hard enough. Why did she need to be pregnant too? Would she get that big as well? In Ishigakure, family is very important. I want you to merge with them. It'll make your infiltration and investigation easier, the Godem answered coolly. As I was saying, if someone other than Sakura would check you, they'll definitively see that you're not pregnant, so thereby I've made these pills for you. She pulled a bottle from her desk drawer. These pills will create the symptoms of a pregnant woman with the help of hormones and bacteria that will stay in your stomach. You're supposed to be in your 7th week or so, making you nearly 2 months pregnant. Take one pill every second day before going to bed. No need to worry, Ba-chan. How hard can it be? The blonde asked and shrugged as she was about to walk over and grab the bottle filled with at least 40 pills. I'm not finished, brat. But not during your period. If you do, 3 things may happen. 1. They'll make you bleed even more and longer than normally, resulting in small blood loss. 2. It may cause menstrual cycle disturbances and stop your period completely for the upcoming months. And in worst case, which is the 3rd thing, it will damage your cervix. The bacteria in the pills will for some reason go to the cervix during your period, instead of your stomach. Don't forget it. If you take the pills during that time, it may lead to you getting sterile, you hear me? And you said you wanted children, so be careful. Naruto felt like dying. It wasn't over the fact that so much could happen to her if she messed up during her period, but the fact that Sasuke was actually smirking behind her. She blushed cutely. Oh Kami, why did she say it in front of Sasuke? She thought with her face become a deeper shade of red. It was not because Naruto was a tomboy that she didn't feel embarrassed when talking about her period in front of a guy. Or any girl stuff for that matter. It was only because it was Sasuke. The kind of relationship they had would make this into an awkward situation. Plus, she wanted to make her male teammate forget that she was indeed a girl. A guy will always hold up while sparring with a girl, at least unconsciously, even a cold bastard like Sasuke. So if the male thought of her as male as well, he wouldn't hold back during their fights. Sakura, there's a bottle of pills for every trimester to simulate every stage of the pregnancy. I trust you to check on Naruto's condition and make sure that she's taking her pills correctly. And also, the hormones I've used in these pills are the hormones that will be released in the body when a female gets pregnant, so Naruto will have mood swings along with other symptoms concerning pregnancies. The bacteria will make her eat more and produce more stomach acid so that she'll get nauseous, etc. The pink-haired Kunoichi nodded. Yes, Hokage-sama, she said, and then Tsunade handed her a folder. Here are more details about the mission. You're the leader for this mission, Sakura. Kakashi is currently helping Kurenai with her baby. They all nodded, showing their agreement. You have today and tomorrow to prepare yourself. The term of this mission is unknown. You'll be back when you finish your job. You're dismissed. Please be careful. After Team 7's meeting with the Godem, Naruto offered her teammates to meet at her apartment in order to set up a plan for this mission. She was the only one living alone, both Sakura and Sasuke living with their parents. Even if her apartment was small, it was comfy, cozy and very calm. It was clearly visible that she'd had years to make her apartment fit her. They stayed up very late examining Team 8's report, which was very helpful. It made their work easier, but the mission was still hard and dangerous, and discussing some other things, such as how they should act and what they should wear, etc. After writing down her last note about their plan, Sakura checked her watch. 2 a.m. Wow, time sure flies fast when you're busy. She yawned, then turned to her teammates. I think that it's enough for today. It's really late and we're tired. We'll finish the plan by tomorrow. We've already got a lot of it covered. Finally it's over. I'm so sleepy, the blonde Kunoichi said, and plopped down onto the carpeted floor in her small living room. You can stay the night if you want. Here is the couch, and my bed can fit two if you sleep close to one another, she said, pointing at the couch in the middle of the living room. Oh, and I have an extra futon too, she added, covering her mouth to prevent a yawn. I'm leaving, Sasuke replied to Naruto's offer. It wasn't harsh really, you can actually translate it, from the bastard language to the normal language. This way. No thank you. See you tomorrow at the usual spot. No thanks, I'll be leaving too. See you tomorrow, Naruto. Sakura too declined, waving goodbye to her friend and trying to catch up with Sasuke. Naruto shrugged, took a quick shower and then went to bed. As she lied down in her small bed, she thought about Tsunade's mission for them. I'm sure that the old hag wanted to get her revenge because I hid her sake the other day. I don't want to act like a pregnant housewife, she thought, but then you thought about being an actual mother again. She studied the ceiling above her and then looked around her apartment. She blinked and then narrowed her eyes as she studied every surface in her bedroom that was connected to the living room. She couldn't help but imagine small children running around, and she shook her head before thinking too much about it. It may be a dream, most likely her hardest dream to reach. After all, who'd want to actually have children with the Kyuubi's host? It would be one hell of a risk, wouldn't it? She clenched her fists and buried her face deep in her pillow. Why did Sakura have to say anything about her being a bad mother? Without any further thought, she dozed off to sleep despite her worried thoughts. The next day, Team 7 finished their plan pretty quickly and it was now lunchtime. They went to Ichiraku ramen shop, where they were supposed to meet with Kiba and Hinata, hoping to get some additional tips about the mission. They still didn't know how Team 8 had blown up their cover. Hi guys, how are you doing? Asked a very excited Naruto. She took place on a random stool at the ramen shop, and lost no time in ordering 2 bowls of miso ramen. Hi, you're early, Kiba said, looking at his watch and then at the 3 teammates of Team 7. Hi Naruto-chan, we're fine thank you, Hinata replied to Naruto's question. Hello Haruno-san, Uchiha-kun, she added and nodded, after noticing the two other members of Team 7 taking their seats too. They ate, talking about random stuff, and when they finished they settled down by a table in a discreet corner of the ramen shop to have some privacy. How did you blow up your cover in Ishi? Was Sasuke's blunt question to Kiba and Hinata. He was known to be a very frank guy, always getting straight to the point without any small talk beforehand. It's a good quality in some situations, but sometimes it's a tad too much. Of course, the Raven himself was satisfied with his way of handling the situation. He hated talking and so he always tried to limit his speech as much as he could. How rude, Teme! Naruto hissed, glaring at the cold Uchiha, who merely looked over at the blonde and arched a brow. Ba-chan sent us to continue your mission. She thought that the best plan ever is to send us as a married couple, stupid old woman. And I have got to be pregnant. The blonde then said to Team 8's present members. Kiba blinked a couple of times and then began laughing his ass off, like he had just heard the funniest joke ever. After regaining his composure, Kiba asked snickering, So she chose you instead of Sakura? But it wasn't really a question, more like a statement. Shut up, dog breath. It's not like we were given options. Everything was already decided, Naruto replied, grinding her teeth due to annoyance. The brunette was having the time of his life. Do you mean that at the beginning, I was supposed to be Sasuke-kun's wife? Sakura asked hurriedly, surprise and annoyance being reflected in her voice. We just gave Hokage-sama some suggestions, we didn't choose the Team W who was going to do the mission, Hinata replied reasonably. Sakura seemed a bit relieved to hear that. She really wanted to be Sasuke's wife even if it was an act. The fact that Naruto was the one to be the wife was unnerving, and she was hoping that she wouldn't mess up this time. Yeah, we learned yesterday that you're the team going to continue our mission. But we didn't know the details, Kiba clarified. But we concluded that if you're going to use the married couple cover, it would be Sasuke and Sakura doing it, not Sasuke and Naruto. Ba-chan didn't want to change her mind. Naruto said, pouting and crossing her arms over her chest. She was a bit pissed that everyone saw Sakura as the better person to be a wife. What was wrong with her? There are thousands of tomboy women out there and loads of them are mothers. So how did you blow up your cover anyway? We don't want to attract unnecessary attention, especially if Naruto is the one going to play the wife role, Sakura asked with bitterness. Hey, stop that, Sakura-chan. You're mean. I'm perfectly able to do my job correctly, Naruto replied, pouting again. I can be a good wife, and I can be a good mother. I'm sure that Naruto-chan will do a great job, Sakura-chan, Hinata reassured the pink-haired Kunoichi. We have more important matter to discuss than Dobi's ability to act. So give us more details about your previous mission, will you? Sasuke said, frustrated by the useless discussion the females were having. He was getting impatient, and everyone knew that he was never the patient type of guy. Man, calm down. What do you want to know that wasn't specified in our report anyway? Kiba asked, trying to calm the Uchiha's temper, but of course, this made the young Uchiha even more frustrated. He took a deep breath and asked again in a low and cold voice. How did you blow up your cover in Ishi? He asked and emphasized every word. Sensing the tension in the air, Sakura spoke softly to Hinata. What made the villagers in Ishi suspicious? Hinata replied, blushing. We introduced ourselves as a couple, and she was too embarrassed to finish her explanation, so Kiba came to her rescue. We were foreigners who asked too much questions for their liking. They were keeping an eye on us from our arrival. Kiba looked at Sasuke and added, blushing cutely. We were too young and our act wasn't convincing enough, I guess. You know, like, you're more touchy-feely as a couple and you kiss and stuff. Don't tell me that we have to be all lovey-dovey to be convincing? Naruto asked, scandalized, her eyes wide open. She did not want to kiss the bastard. The time in the academy was once too much, and also, she would only kiss the man she loved, no one else. Not necessarily, but you have to be really comfortable in each other's presence. Just show them that you're familiar with each other and know each other. Also, if you're supposed to be pregnant, you've got to show that you know each other's bodies as well, Kiba replied calmly, but with a small smirk on his lips. Before Naruto could start screaming profanities at the man, Hinata interrupted them. I was the one at fault, she added, looking down at the surface of the hard wooden table. It was hard for me to feel at ease around Kiba-kun, she confessed, not daring to look at her teammate who felt a sting of hurt. How's that? You like him after all. It should have been easy to stick around Kiba every time, Naruto pointed out bluntly, a finger put below her bottom lip in a thinking fashion. Well, he stinks like a wet dog, but that's beside the point. She smirked as Kiba narrowed his eyes at her. Revenge. After this tactless intervention, ignoring Naruto's insult, both Kiba and Hinata turned a deep shade of red. The young Hyuga heiress looked at Naruto with wide eyes feeling exposed, while the dog lover was looking at Hinata unable to say anything. Ow, why did you do that, Sakura-chan? The blonde shouted, rubbing her abused head after receiving a hard punch from Sakura, who was fuming, and looking at her with a vein ticking by her forehead. You know, you're not supposed to hit a pregnant woman. 1. Because you're stupid. 2. You're not pregnant, you dolt. And 3. Shut up, Baka. You're so stupid, Naruto, Sakura added, glaring at her female teammate. She's completely hopeless. Dobi, Sasuke said, smirking. What a dumb blonde she can be, he thought, and smiled at said blonde's antics. What the fuck? I didn't do anything bad. I mean, come on. Kiba practically said that we're supposed to have with each other. Naruto pouted, looking away and mumbling under her breath about stuck-up Teme and freaking She-Hulk. Sasuke was frowning and having a mental debate with himself about with the blonde. Kiba was still in a state of shock. After 4 years of teamwork with the young Hyuga heiress, he grew more and more attracted to her, but he never found the guts to ask her out. He never thought that his crush could like him too. Does she really like me? He kept asking himself, too scared to ask the girl directly. So he stayed with looking at her with wide, lustrous eyes, holding his breath. Hinata, are you alright? Naruto asked, concerned about Hinata's well-being. She received a vigorous nod as a reply. Hinata, don't tell me that you didn't tell him about how you feel. Naruto asked, frowning, with a much softer voice and genuine concern in her voice. Naruto, shut up, Sakura warned and hit her in the stomach, earning a groan from Naruto, who bent over a little to catch her breath, still grinning nonetheless. All of a sudden they heard a loud thump. They all looked down and found Kiba on the ground. He had fainted, unable to process that new piece of information. Look at what you did, Naruto, Sakura reprimanded. We didn't manage to talk about the mission because of you. What? Naruto shouted back at her. I didn't know that they didn't talk about their feelings yet, she said with narrowed eyes, and looked at Hinata, who'd crouched down to help Kiba stand up. Is it true? Kiba asked hopefully, trying to find in Hinata's eyes the answer he was looking for. Well, yes, I like you, Kiba-kun, Hinata replied, looking down. It wasn't really the confession that she had imagined. In her dreams, Kiba was the one confessing to her, and in a very romantic way, of course. This was the complete opposite. What was she supposed to do? Team 7 stared at the two blushing teenagers and decided that it was best to leave the two of them alone, so that they could have a talk. They left the restaurant, leaving the two lovebirds alone. Everyone in Konoha knew that the two ninjas liked each other, but were too scared to confess their feelings. It was really stupid. Their feelings were literally written all over their face whenever they were around each other. It was really amazing how they were oblivious to the signals they kept sending to each other. It looked like they just needed a little push, all thanks to Naruto, who was quite pleased with her doings. Life is too short, especially for ninjas. They have no time to waste. They weren't really helpful. Why did you bring up their love life, Naruto? Because of you. Sakura didn't finish her lecture and was interrupted by Naruto's calm reply. Oh please, Sakura-chan, they didn't know more than what we do about the mission. We just have to act familiar and comfortable around each other, as they said, and if you ask me, I think that sounds logical. So we call a truce, Teme, for the sake of the mission, okay? Naruto said, grinning like a Cheshire cat at the raven who was looking ahead. Sasuke nodded, agreeing with Naruto, but not saying it out loud. I guess that means yes, alright then, Naruto said, and stretched, with her hands above her head, her shirt riding up her stomach. Naruto, watch your shirt, the pink cat warned as she noticed this. We should go pack and rest for the day. Tomorrow we'll meet at the gates at 6 a.m. Sakura continued bossily and turned to leave. Sasuke didn't waste time to go back home either. He was in a bad mood. He really thought that Kiba would be able to give him more helpful advice. I just have to stick with what the Dobi said, familiar and comfortable. Oh, I almost forgot, Sakura added, looking back at Naruto, then asked, Naruto, do you have less baggy and more feminine clothes? I only have my ninja gears and… Let me think. One casual outfit Shizune bought me. Once, Naruto replied thoughtfully, unable to remember when and why Shizune bought those clothes. She remembered vaguely Tsunade talking about gross orange jumpsuit from her younger years. Oh yeah, she was the one who asked Shizune to buy decent clothes for Naruto. Last year, Konoha had received an important donation from a very satisfied customer. The village hidden in the leaves had organized a festival to thank him for his generous contribution. Naruto was one of the ninjas who had been assigned to attend some stands to let the villagers have fun during the festival instead of working. She and Sakura had been selling cotton candies. It was very relaxing and refreshing. Anyway, the Godem thought that Naruto had needed to wear something more appropriate, which was really stupid in Naruto's opinion. What's the problem with her clothes? Heck, it was appropriate too. Well, at least Shizune didn't buy anything too girly or hideous. It was a simple black halter dress that fell just below the knee, and had thin shoulder straps. Since the blonde Kunoichi hadn't felt comfortable with that light dress, Shizune had bought her a dark orange turtleneck top to cover her cleavage. That was definitively a feminine outfit which showed a beautiful young lady instead of an undisciplined tomboy. Needless to say, that everyone had been stunned. Naruto had been gorgeous in comparison to what she'd usually look like. Some guys had taken analyzing looks at her, but of course, she'd been oblivious to the attention she got from the male population. Speaking of guys, Sasuke had also been stunned, but he did nothing more than slightly insulting his blonde teammate. He'd kept telling her that she looked ridiculous, like a boy wearing a dress. Of course, it was a lie, but he would never admit that Naruto looked okay in that dress. As for Sakura, she had not liked being left behind. She'd been totally shadowed by that tomboy of a teammate. Everyone had been curious to see Naruto with an actual dress on. The good point was that they had sold every single cotton candy they'd made. So, you can guess, that Sakura did most certainly remember perfectly what outfit Naruto was talking about. Are you referring to the dress that you were wearing during last year's festival? Sakura asked and received an affirmative nod from her teammate. Okay, I'll come with you to see if it still fits you, the pinkette said. This reminded her that, saying Naruto wasn't feminine enough was definitively not true, but everyone seemed to forget that the blonde Kunoichi was a girl, and they weren't the ones to blame. Naruto would always wear the standard Chunin pants and vest, but use different shirts underneath said vest. She'd use long-sleeved tight shirts, three-quarter-sleeved shirts and t-shirts, but never tops for some reason. Perhaps it was because of the fact that she always let her Chunin vest open, and didn't want to show off any cleavage. The blonde was for some reason very critical about that. To be honest, Sakura had never seen her upper arms, legs or chest area bare, even when they took baths at the onsen. Naruto would use the longest towels to wrap around her body and then keep it high up against her chest, never showing off anything. It made the pinkette wonder if the blonde was self-conscious about her body. Once at Naruto's apartment, Sakura went to check the girl's wardrobe. The dress was indeed the only feminine clothing that Naruto possessed. She told her to try it on, and Naruto went to the bathroom to change. Apparently, from what the blonde told Sakura, the dress ended above Naruto's knees, and the top felt too tight at the chest. She needed new clothes. We have to buy new clothes for you, Naruto, Sakura announced, nodding her head as Naruto walked out from the bathroom with all her ninja gears on except for the Chunin vest. Naruto pouted and sighed. Okay, but please, I don't want clothes too tight, too short or too girly. Sakura couldn't help but giggle at this. You should be delighted to go shopping, you know. Most women love shopping. HMPH. I'm perfectly fine with the style I've got already. I'm just agreeing for the sake of the mission, Naruto replied while the pink-haired Kunoichi dragged her out of her apartment and down the street. They headed to 3 different stores, one for shoes and the other 2 were for clothes and accessories. Sakura was in heaven while Naruto was living a nightmare. They were short of money, but Sakura insisted on trying most of the clothes she liked. She said that it was the only way to make the best choice. Of course, Naruto tried to sneak out the store, but under Sakura's threats she chickened out. What? You would do that if she threatened to dye your hair orange in your sleep? I like orange but not as a hair color. In the end, they only bought a few clothes. A light blue summer dress, a more formal yellow shirt, a white blouse and dark green capri pants. "We did a great job together," Sakura announced cheerfully as they walked out from the last store, a very distressed Naruto following her. The blonde glared at her giggling teammate. "Oh, come on Naruto, it was fun. We never went shopping before. We definitively must do it again." It made Naruto very happy to hear Sakura looking forwards to another time to hang out together. She always wanted to be close to her friends, and for some reason, Sakura and her had never really bonded. The pinkette seemed to hate her, but she had never done anything wrong to her, at least she thought so. She respected her pink-haired teammate a lot, and hated it when Sasuke rejected her so harshly. So Naruto always invited her to have lunch together, to cheer her up, but Sakura never agreed. It hurt her a bit, but she never gave up, and here was her reward for her patience. Sakura was the one asking to spend some time together. "Maybe, but I don't want to try clothes when I'm sure that I won't buy them. It's a waste of time and energy," Naruto replied, pouting, not really meaning to complain. "It was fun. I know you think the same. So shut up," Sakura replied, smirking. "Anyway, I have to go. My mission for today is finished. Go home and don't forget to take your pills. It'll take 2 days for them to work for the first time. See you tomorrow." And with that, she left her blonde teammate in the middle of the street carrying her bags, looking like a lost puppy. Great. She had completely forgotten about the pills. She was tired and needed to rest. It was a first experience in the shopping land as a girl, and she felt exhausted. She walked a little, then sat down on a bench that was located near one of the parks. In front of her was a small playground filled with children playing and laughing. When she was younger, she used to hide behind a tree and look at other children her age playing and having fun, their parents not too far behind, watching over them tenderly, ready to soothe their child's injuries. It had made her smile, but also glare because of jealousy. She always envied them, and now she was going to act like she was a wife, soon to be mother. They couldn't have chosen a worse candidate. She noticed a group of pregnant women sitting together by another bench where there was a table as well. They were chatting lively and giggling every now and then. Naruto wondered what they were talking about. They looked so happy, especially when they were caressing their enormous belly, a special smile coming across their faces. "Is everyone really thinking that I won't be a good mother?" She frowned and lowered her eyes, absent-mindedly focusing on a dirty spot on the ground. "Do you really need to have a mother to know how to be a good mother yourself in the future?" she thought, harboring a sad expression on her face. The blonde kunoichi looked up, trying to compose herself. Her frown deepened when she noticed one of the soon-to-be mother kissing who seemed to be her husband. She froze when she noticed this, and felt a huge pang of jealousy in her chest. She wanted to be loved as well, to have a father of her children, someone to be with during her worst time, and someone to just hold and love, with all her heart. Was it too much to ask for, her being the Kyuubi Biju and all? She touched her stomach briefly and bit her lower lip as she felt the familiar flat stomach under her fingers. She looked up again, and the husband was now hugging her wife from behind, caressing her stomach as well. It made her think of Sasuke, and that he was supposed to be the father of her pretend child. She made a face. "Ew, am I supposed to act like that with Sasuke Teme?" she wondered incredulously. "No way in hell is that ever going to happen. He doesn't even want to touch me if it's not for sparring." It was getting late, the sun was setting and the sky was turning a beautiful shade of orange, Naruto's favorite color. She watched the children complain to their parents. Some wanted to stay a bit longer and keep playing, others were happy to see their father or older sibling coming to pick them up. She sighed and got up to head home, almost forgetting her stuff, thankfully realizing it in the last second. Not once had she noticed that there had been a person focusing only on her, not caring about the people around, watching her facial expressions as she watched certain events. Once at home, she packed her luggage, hiding her kunai and shuriken in a secret compartment. She was too tired to eat, but went to prepare her dinner anyway. As Sakura has said before, she was too skinny, and also, their mission was going to start the following day, and they were going to travel for a whole day to reach Ishi. She needed to be in a good shape. After the usual dinner and a shower, she put on her night clothes, wondering mindlessly if she would have to share the same bed with Sasuke, and in that case what would she wear to sleep? Not her oversized washed-out t-shirt anyway. Maybe she should get one of those nightgowns Sakura had showed her as they went lingerie shopping. It made her shudder as she thought about it. It had been filled with frills and transparent fabric, not covering anything up. Damn, even her t-shirt was better than that, but she should get some night pants as well. She sat down on her bed, looking at the innocent white pill that Tsunade had given her. I wonder how these pills will make me look like a pregnant woman. I hope I'm not going to look like a big cow. She was a ninja, and it was her duty to execute the Hokage's order, even if she didn't trust her. Shrugging, she swallowed the mysterious pill along with some water from a bottle near her bed. She set her alarm clock at 5 a.m. and drifted off to sleep instantly. At 6 a.m. the members of Team 7 were supposed to meet at the main gates as planned the previous day. Everyone had to wear casual clothes in case they met ninjas or Ishi travelers during their trip to the village. Sasuke was the first one to arrive at the gates, no surprise there. He was wearing black jeans and a dark blue tank top. His dark clothing was contrasting amazingly well with his pale skin, at the same time as it made him blend in well with the villagers. The only thing that made him act like a ninja was the fact that he walked like one, controlled, easy movements. He leaned on the wall and crossed his arms, accentuating the features of his strong biceps. His jeans lightly tied at his thighs gave an absolutely watering view. No one would deny it, no man and definitively no woman, Sasuke was gorgeous. Sakura was the second one to reach the main gates, and was delighted to see Sasuke already there. She knew that Naruto would be late. It wasn't very like her, but it didn't surprise her either. She checked her appearance and approached her teammate. She was wearing a white summer dress that reached her knees. It had a tight waistline to show her slim waist and was loose around her chest to make the illusion of a developed bosom. The skirt was light and swayed graciously with the cool breeze of the morning. All in all, Sakura was cute this very morning. She wanted to look good for Sasuke. Really, her objective was to make Sasuke look at her from another light after this mission. She wanted to prove to him that she could be a good girlfriend, and not as annoying as she'd appeared as in younger years. "Good morning, Sasuke-kun." She greeted him, smiling and blushing slightly, as she took in his appearance. Of course, he had sensed her approaching, and saw how that annoying girl was looking at him. It was obvious that she was hoping to get a reaction out of him, and he was not going to grace her with one. That girl was desperate. She could mistake anything as an acknowledgement of any form of advance coming from her. He sighed mentally. Why didn't she understand that he was not interested in her? He was very much aware of the fact that she wasn't crushing on him, but rather that she truly did fancy him. It only made matters worse for the young Uchiha. Sakura pouted as she noticed that Sasuke had barely as much as looked at her. Well, that wasn't what I was expecting from him, she thought. She tried to start a conversation with him but to no avail, so she settled down on her little green backpack waiting for her last teammate. Naruto was really late by now, over 20 minutes, and it was beginning to make her two teammates a bit worried. After 25 minutes wait, Naruto came running towards them, her face flushed and completely out of breath. She stopped by Sakura's side and bent down, her hands on her knees trying to catch her breath. She wasn't wearing a goofy expression as she usually did, she looked rather confused actually. "Baka, why are you so late? We should have been gone 20 minutes ago, you idiot," Sakura yelled, smacking her fist on Naruto's thick skull. "Oh ow. Sakura-chan, please stop," Naruto shouted, panting and rubbing her abused head. "I'm sorry. I couldn't wake up. I am really tired. I don't understand why," she explained as her eyes wandered left and right, not daring to look up at the angered woman. Sakura noticed that the blonde was a bit anxious as to why she was tired. That's when she remembered the pills. They were taking effect earlier than expected. "Oh, that must be the pills. Sorry, I should have thought about that. You all right? Do you feel any pain?" Sakura asked worriedly as she touched Naruto's head caringly. "No, I'm just tired," Naruto reassured her teammate and backed away, not used to the caring Sakura. "Let's go," Sasuke replied, looking at Naruto. His face was emotionless, but Naruto's appearance surprised him. Too used to a boyish Naruto, this girly Naruto was something different. He looked away. He didn't want to think about the Dobi's look. He didn't care about that dumb girl, less alone her appearance. Naruto was indeed looking very different. She was wearing a white blouse with two braid-like horizontal patterns under her chest, accentuating her small breasts in the slightest. Since she hated skirts and dresses, she chose to wear the orange capri pants. It was simple and feminine but not too much, and it was orange. She didn't know if she looked girly enough, and like a pregnant wife, so she approached Sakura and called for her with a low voice. "Sakura-chan," she said and looked up at Sasuke to see if he was aware of their small talk. Her teammate looked at her and asked, "What is it, Naruto? Do I look? Are the clothes I chose for today okay? What the hell? Why am I feeling self-conscious so suddenly?" Sakura couldn't help but giggle. Naruto was so funny when embarrassed. "Of course. We chose your clothes together, did you forget? Besides, I thought you didn't care about your look, or do you?" she asked teasingly and took a look at Naruto's hair that was in a French braid. "Oh, I didn't know you knew how to braid," she exclaimed with an arched brow. "It looks good on you." Naruto pouted, crossing her arms over her chest, and looked away, embarrassed. "Of course I can braid, but about my question, arg. Forget it, she just didn't want to blow up their cover." She remembered yesterday that all the pregnant women were wearing oversized dresses. That must be because of their huge belly then, she guessed, but she didn't remember what the others were wearing. She was too focused on the pregnant women. "You realized that you may scare someone looking like that?" Sasuke said, smirking like the cocky bastard he was. He was the one leading the way, but wasn't far enough to miss the little chit-chat between the two girls behind him. It made him smile in the slightest as he heard that Naruto, the more boyish girl in the whole village, cared about her looks. The scandalized blonde Kunoichi launched herself on Sasuke's back. She wanted to beat the shit out of that bastard, he always kept on insulting her. Said Raven had been prepared for the attack but nearly lost his balance since he hadn't been prepared on the blonde actually jumping onto his back. He grabbed her legs to keep himself on his feet. "You teme." Sakura came to the rescue and held Naruto, but it didn't stop the angry girl from shouting. "Shut up, you bastard. I wasn't asking for your opinion. Calm down, Naruto." Sasuke-kun didn't do anything wrong, but Naruto kept on struggling, trying to get free from Sakura's tight grasp. "What? He insulted me again." Naruto looked at Sakura. How can that girl take his side? She is so blind. That guy is a complete asshole. She deserves so much better. "Fine, but don't talk to me again, you prick," Naruto said, glaring at the smirking Uchiha, who was looking down at her smugly. Oh, how much she wanted to wipe that smirk from his ugly face. His features were the hottest topic among females in the village, and after a while it had become very tedious to Naruto, so she really didn't care anymore. She just couldn't appreciate his looks the way the other women did. She puffed her cheek and ran forwards to lead the way. Needless to say, that she was now in a very, very bad mood, and wanted to express her anger by running as fast as she could. After running up in the trees for 5 hours non-stop, Sakura tried to calm her teammate's temper. "Naruto, slow down." No reply. "You woke up tired this morning. Don't exhaust yourself more than you already are. We're still very far from Ishi," she insisted, and she noticed that Sasuke was only looking at the blonde ahead of them instead of looking at where he placed his feet. "I'm fine, Sakura-chan, don't worry," Naruto replied, looking back at her teammate and smiling sheepishly, her stuttering giving her way. She was a bit tired but didn't want to stop. She knew that if she did, she would feel the soreness of her muscles tenfold, and wouldn't be able to keep up with her teammates. The pills were beginning to kick in as well. She was feeling a bit more tired than usual, as if she was running out of chakra really fast, and there was a pelvic soreness growing up since half an hour ago, and it didn't look like it was going to dissipate anytime soon. Sasuke and Sakura were closely following her and saw how slow she was becoming. She was also making faces from time to time. That girl was too stubborn for her own good, and the young Uchiha was beginning to think that maybe Sakura would have been more suitable to play the pregnant housewife instead of Naruto. At least, Sakura knew her limits. "We should take a break. It's been 6 hours since we left Konoha," Sasuke said, slowing down. "Sasuke-kun is right. We need to eat and rest a bit," Sakura agreed, looking at Naruto, who was sweating furiously. All right," the blonde Kunoichi docilely did as told and tried to catch her breath. She was completely exhausted. "I shouldn't have run so fast after all. But I can usually take more than this. What's wrong with my body?" She plopped down on the dirty ground, leaning on a tree. She closed her eyes, panting heavily and trying to relax. The cool breeze caressing her heated skin felt good, and helped her relax. Slowly, the soreness of her muscles began to intensify. "What the fuck are those pills? I feel like shit," she thought, angrily massaging her ankles unconsciously. "How am I going to fight if we're attacked?" The old hag didn't think about that one, did she? She felt a presence before her and opened her eyes slowly, coming face to face with a crouching Sasuke. "Drink," Sasuke said, offering her some water. "Sakura is inspecting the place." Huh, she looked around blinking. She had not heard either Sakura leaving or Sasuke approaching her. Luckily, they weren't attacked or else she wouldn't be very helpful. "Thanks," she replied quietly, taking the offered cup and drinking its content in one go. She didn't feel thirsty until Sasuke gave her that cup of water, and now she wanted to drink every drop of water they had. It seemed that her raven-haired teammate caught her thoughts, and filled her cup a second time. He was getting worried about his dumb teammate. She looked to be in a lot of pain. He was beginning to question Tsunade's medical skills. "What the hell are those pills? How are you feeling?" he finally asked with his usual poker face. "Fine. Are you worried, Teme?" Naruto asked teasingly with a half-splitting grin on her still flushed face. Her tired features didn't make it look less taunting though. "Shut up. If you need to rest, say it, or else you'll slow us down," Sasuke snapped at her, not liking being made fun of. "This place is clear. We can stop here for a while and rest." Sakura had arrived and looked suspiciously at her two teammates. "How are you feeling, Naruto?" she asked, approaching her friend. "I'm perfectly fine, Sakura-chan," Naruto replied, feeling suddenly pissed off. "I'm fine. I'm not weak, damn it." Sakura didn't believe her, and crouched down by her side to check on her. She gathered her chakra on her right hand. It began to glow green and hover it on Naruto's ankles to heal her soreness. "Turn around," she ordered the blue-eyed Kunoichi, and began healing the soreness on her lower back and stomach as well. She made sure that the muscles relaxed so that her pelvic wasn't as sore anymore. She knew from meeting other pregnant women that it could be a real pain with the pelvic aching. "Thank you, Sakura-chan. You're a lifesaver." Naruto felt so much better, all thanks to Sakura. "How did you know about my back?" she asked. After all, she didn't say anything about it. "It's my job to know this kind of things," the medic Nin replied, smiling at her confused teammate. It could not be easy to have these symptoms during a mission such as this. They would have to travel a lot before they were even in Ishi. It was as long as the way to Suna and a little more. "I didn't imagine that those pills could be this powerful. Now I understand why Tsunade-sama said that you're the one who's going to make them less suspicious." "Huh? What do you mean?" Naruto asked. She was confused. What was the relationship between their cover and feeling like shit? "The pills are perfectly simulating the symptoms of a pregnant woman. That's why you're so tired and have some pelvic pains," Sakura explained with a small smile. "This is definitively going to make the villagers less suspicious. Well done, Tsunade-sama." Now, she was thinking that she was lucky for not having to suffer like this during their mission. "And when is it going to stop?" the poor Kunoichi asked anxiously as she slightly rubbed her hips. They were still aching a little. "Well, I'll explain to you what a pregnant woman feels at her first semester. But let's eat first." And as if understanding them perfectly well, Naruto's stomach growled. She got up, blushing cutely, and rubbed the back of her head. "Hee, okay, I found some edible fruits," the Raven Ninja informed his teammates, putting down said fruits. Naruto looked up at him with a startled expression. She hadn't even noticed that the Raven left them. "Whoa, the green apples look so yummy." The blonde squealed, attacking the apples before anyone else could grab them. Her behavior was getting weirder, and her teammates were starting to fear for the girl's intellectual capabilities. Not like she had any brain cells to lose if you ask Sasuke, but it's creepy to see Naruto squeal because of green apples. "Is she okay?" Sasuke quietly asked the medic Nin, keeping his voice low so that Naruto couldn't hear him. "Yes, she is actually," Sakura replied, cautiously eyeing Naruto's movements, and slightly tilting her head to figure out how Naruto had managed to eat 3 apples at the same time. That girl was really skilled when it came to eating. "You sure?" Sasuke asked her slowly, still worried about their dumb teammate. It's understandable, Uzumaki always meant trouble, and the young Uchiha didn't want to take care of any additional trouble. "I can't believe that I'm going to be stuck with her for an unknown amount of time that could eventually be agonizingly long. And act like her caring and loving husband." "Yeah, she's just craving for apples," Sakura replied. "It's common for pregnant women during the first semester of the pregnancy." She couldn't believe that she was talking to her very male teammate about pregnancy, and she wasn't even the pregnant one. "So good. It was delicious," Naruto moaned, rubbing her filled tummy. "Stewed apples taste better though," she added after a second thought. "You can lie down if you want," We will stay here for a little while, so you should rest while you can. Sakura informed her blonde teammate and started to eat some fruit herself. Really? Naruto asked. She didn't want to waste too much time to rest. For how long? Of course you can rest, and you don't have to think about time. Just rest, the pink-haired Kunoichi reassured her, smiling. Sometimes she felt an urge to protect Naruto. She didn't know how to explain it, but right now, she felt the need to protect and reassure her teammate, like a sister would do with her younger siblings. Okay, was Naruto's soft reply with a hint of tiredness in her voice. 12 minutes later, the young Uzumaki was fast asleep. Do you think the mission will go well with Naruto in this condition? Sasuke asked the medic Nen. I don't think she'll be able to take care of herself in case something bad happens. He was getting more and more worried. Sure, maybe she won't blow up their cover after all, but if they were identified by the enemy, Naruto was going to be their weak spot. They would see a pregnant woman, and they'd know that the rest of the team would make sure to get her away from them, unhurt. I think that her body is still getting used to the drug. She should be better by tomorrow, Sakura replied confidently. If it's not the case, we will inform Tsunade-sama. However, she knew what would happen to Naruto when taking the pills. Perhaps it's not as big of a risk of getting attacked as we believe. The young Uchiha nodded. Tsunade knew what she was doing. They should only contact her if the situation got way out of control. I don't know the extent of those pills, but if they're really effective, she'll feel like a pregnant woman for real, she added, glancing at her sleeping teammate. She should feel tired and sleepy. Maybe she'll experience morning sicknesses. Tsunade mentioned that bacteria, after all, mood swings, cravings and/or repulsiveness towards food. I'm going for the former. A raised eyebrow was the only reply she got from her male teammate. He wasn't prepared for this kind of situation. He'd never in his entire life dealt with a pregnant woman, let alone a pregnant woman that acted like Naruto, extremely carelessly. Actually, these symptoms are the objectives of the pills. I just hope she won't be too tired and out of chakra when she needs to protect herself. Sakura looked at Sasuke and added. Tsunade-sama thought that with Kyuubi's endless chakra, she should be alright, but we need to look after her. I'll talk to her, but I'm not sure if she'll tell us when she feels weak. She'll most likely do what she did today. Keep on pushing herself even if she feels tired or hurt. Sasuke nodded. He wasn't cold-hearted, and he wasn't going to let Naruto hurt herself because of her own stubbornness. Since you're her husband, and it's part of your cover, you keep a watchful eye on her. You've got to act very protective of her as well, she said and sighed. But, I think that she should be alright as long as she doesn't push herself too far. I just fear for her chakra rate, that's all. Once at Ishi, we will see if the plan needs to be changed. Sasuke nodded again. They had thought about different possibilities and plans, they were ready. But the young Uchiha couldn't help but feel insecure, so un-Uchiha-like. He'd went on several dangerous missions and always felt confident, but for this one he was a bit lost. He never had to act or play a role. A husband role, and with the dobi nonetheless. He sighed mentally. He, in all honesty, had no idea what a husband should do around his pregnant wife. Speaking of pregnant, he knew nothing about it, so he couldn't really help Naruto. He shouldn't have any doubt, he was a ninja, and more importantly, he was an Uchiha. An Uchiha that never backs down or hesitates. He wondered how his father would react if he knew that his son was hesitant because of a simple undercover mission. He clenched his hands into fists at that thought. He didn't need to think about that at the moment, he needed to concentrate. Why was his father hunting his thoughts even when he was far away from him? He hated that. He knew that he was craving for his father acknowledgement, and it made him sick. He wanted to forget about his father so bad. But he kept hunting his thoughts, his dreams. He was getting tired. When is he going to leave me alone? He asked himself and raked a hand through his nicely shaped hair. What do you think? Sasuke caught the last part of Sakura's question. It made him mad to know that he was too caught up by his own thoughts to even notice his teammate's presence. He had to train on that part. We need to rest, Sasuke said to hide his lack of concentration. I'll keep watch first, make sure to rest well. I'll get you later. His pink-haired teammate nodded, believing that he had heard her. Fortunately, he had said something related to the topic. Sasuke took place on a branch hovering over their little camp. The air was hot, almost suffocating. The sun was high, indicating that it was around 2 p.m. The young shinobi closed his eyes to feel his surroundings. memories from the previous night resurfacing involuntarily. It was the day before Sasuke was supposed to leave for his mission. Tomorrow was the D-Day. He wasn't looking forwards to it, to be honest. He was supposed to be Naruto's husband. It didn't bode well. The Uchiha family was silently having dinner. The only noises that could be heard were the ticking clock, and little clinking of porcelain dishes when bowls were being filled up. For most people, such silence would have been uncomfortable, but for the Uchiha it was common, it was welcomed. Soon the silence was broken by the young son of the family. "Father, Mother," Sasuke called his parents to get their attention. "Hokage-sama assigned me and my team to a new mission, and I'll be leaving tomorrow," the 17-year-old said. His father nodded. "A ninja shouldn't stay inactive for such a long period. Your last mission was a month ago." Trust Fugaku to point out the negative point first. It was easy to read his unsaid words though. "I hope you didn't slack off. I was in a meeting with Hokage-sama earlier today, and she didn't tell me about your mission," he added, locking eyes with his son. "What is this mission about anyway? For how long will you be gone?" "I'm sorry father, it's an A-ranked mission. I can't give any information about it," Sasuke replied professionally. He had the perfect excuse to avoid talking to his father. Concerning the length of the mission, 10 months or so, it may be longer, it may be shorter. The latter nodded, clearly pleased by his son's answer. "Congratulations Sasuke, good luck with your mission." His mother congratulated him cheerfully with a smile gracing her lips. She looked eerily much like a female version of Sasuke, while Fugaku looked very much like the oldest Uchiha heir, Itachi. "When are you going to be back then? You said around 10 months? That's awfully long. When our job is done we can return home, and concerning the current circumstances it will take around 10 months. Sasuke replied, then took a sip of water. A pregnancy took a little over 9 months, technically 10, so it was how much time they had on their hands basically. If they had to, they were going to use all the time given them. "Be careful honey. Itachi is on a mission and now you as well. I'm going to feel lonely without you," Makoto said. She was such a kind person, and a very loving mother. Sasuke wondered vaguely if Naruto would be able to act like his mother. Maybe in that case, he would be able to tolerate her daily presence during the mission. "Don't worry, I'll be back soon," Sasuke reassured his mother. Then he excused himself from table and went to his room. He closed the door behind him before sitting down onto the futon. He buried his face in his hands, and exhaled loudly. His father was looking down upon him. He cursed, holding himself from crashing his fist on the nearby wall. He wanted to ignore his father's denoted comments, but it was really hard. This mission was going to give him some fresh air. He needed to stay away from that man for a while. He was driving him crazy, and he hated being affected by him this much. A soft knocking on his door pulled him out of his internal battle. "Honey, can I come in?" It was his mother standing on the other side, most likely worried about her youngest son. "Come in," Sasuke replied, sitting up straight on the futon, his posture a bit more relaxed than before. Makoto always calmed him down by her mere presence, only. He was not a mother's boy, his mother was his little sunshine, that's all. He rarely expressed his feelings towards her, but he knew that she understood him very well. He never had to word his thoughts with her. She was amazing just like that. He guessed that it was some of the characteristics he was looking for in a woman to marry himself one day. After all, it's not uncommon for men to look for a woman that reminds them of their mother. "When are you going to meet with your team?" she asked, approaching her son and sitting by his left on the futon. "We're going to meet at 6 a.m., he replied, and his mother nodded knowingly. "I learned a new recipe from Madame Akamichi today. I'll try it when you're back then," she said, smiling, completely changing the topic. "It's called sencha cake, a green tea flavored cake. I know you hate sweets, but this one is really delicious. I'm sure you'll like it." She smiled warmly at him, and said no more. "I'll try it when I get back," he replied, catching his mother's request. She meant by that, "Please come back safe." Makoto knew that her son, like many other Uchiha, hated it when she asked them to be careful. She rarely ever said the words though. Today was the recipe excuse. "Great. Good night honey," she said, smiling, and then left the room, letting the door fall shut behind her. The young Uchiha looked at her retreating back and smiled a little himself. He felt much better, he realized. Only his mother had the power to do so. Only his mother. A faint cracking noise was heard, bringing the young Uchiha back to reality. He looked around him and felt someone's presence coming from the direction of the river. He jumped down the tree and landed by Sakura's side. The woman was frowning at him as she sat still, looking at the direction from where the sound was coming. "Someone is coming. Wake Naruto up," he whispered, his eyes glued to the spot where the unknown person should appear. Sakura nodded and went to wake her sleeping teammate. The dark-haired ninja took silent steps forwards, doing his best to detect the enemy's presence, to have the upper hand in case of an attack. He looked at his surroundings, calculating meticulously the distance between himself and the trees. He had enough room to use his Kaiden no Jutsu without burning down the whole place. That's good. Once in front of the bushes, he looked through them and saw a young man crouched down. He was turning his back to him, and didn't look like he was conscious of Team 7's presence. A backpack was thrown randomly at the man's feet, a fishing rod at his left and a bucket at his right. "Aha, caught you," the man said, getting up from his crouched position, and turned around. He was holding a fish in his hands and had apparently just gotten back from the river. "Ah," the man hollered, putting his right hand on his chest as he noticed that he wasn't alone. "Man, you freaked me out," he accused Sasuke and bent down to pick up the fish he'd dropped. "Sorry, I thought it was an animal or a ninja," Sasuke apologized, inspecting the man's appearance. The man was taller than him and seemed older too, 20 or 22 maximum. He had dark gray hair, spiked up at the top, and matching dark gray eyes. His dark skin made his other features stand out. Sasuke noticed a weird scar on the man's chin, a very noticeable cross. He was wearing white pants and a gray kimono vest with a green belt tied at his waist. He had a built body. He was strong but didn't look dangerous. "Hee, it could happen to anyone. It's cool, I never really saw you around. I'm Kaiza." The man introduced himself, offering his right hand to Sasuke. "I just got back from the river, got a nice catch as you can see," he said and grinned, as he held up the fish. He'd stuck his fingers through the fish's eyeballs and was now carrying it by the head. "Sasuke," the young Uchiha replied, shaking the offered hand firmly. "We're travelers," he added, gauging the man's reaction, as he stepped aside and showed the man their camp. "Need any direction? I'm just going to prepare this fish, and then I was about to look for some worms." "As you may have already guessed, I'm here for some fishing," Kaiza grinned, rubbing the back of his head. Both his personality and behavior reminded the Raven of his teammate. "It's my secret spot, so please don't tell anyone," he finished and smirked playfully. "I won't, don't worry," Sasuke said, confirming that the man was not a shinobi. "So where are you going?" the man asked after a while. He'd prepared the fish with salt and had then wrapped it up in bitch bark. "Ishigakure, but we're not really sure of where to go from here though," the young Uchiha replied. The man's presence meant the beginning of their mission. "Really? I'm from Ishi and was heading there, it's not that far away. However, people there are not used to foreigners. Can I know what business brings you there?" Kaiza asked cautiously and tilted his head to the side. He didn't want to look unwelcoming, but he knew that the land of Earth was going through a rough time of some sort, so it wasn't the safest of places. "I'm traveling with my wife and our personal doctor." Sasuke lied perfectly. The man only smiled as he heard this. Even though Sasuke was nearly 18, he could pass for at least 23. "We set up camp behind these bushes, my wife wasn't feeling very well. She's pregnant," he added, titling his head towards the camp he'd shown the man before. "I must join them or they'll worry about me, so if you want to, you could come join us. Let me give you some of my fish though, your wife needs some energy if she's pregnant," the tan man said, offering 3 fish tied tightly with a rope through their eyes and heads, birch bark covering their bodies and tails. "Thank you," the dark-haired ninja thanked him, taking the offered fish. "Follow me, I'll introduce you to my little family." The two men headed to Team 7's camp. Naruto was sitting on a rock, whining about her stiff neck and rubbing her sides because of a soreness. Her little nap helped her feel better, but she slept in a rather uncomfortable position. Sakura was massaging her neck and shoulders, giggling. They had guessed that the place was clear and relaxed, waiting for Sasuke to return. When said Raven appeared, he nodded to his teammates, confirming that the man was no harm, and signaling the beginning of the mission. "Naruto, how are you feeling?" he asked, approaching his wife, then crouched down at her level. He put one of his hands on her shoulder and the other one on her cheek, hoping to look credible. For a little second, Naruto forgot that they had to act, and looked at Sasuke questioningly, wondering why the hell the Teme cared about her. Then it clicked and she replied, smiling softly. I'm feeling better now, don't worry. Sasuke and Sakura mentally sighed in relief after hearing Naruto's answer. Who's that? Sakura asked her teammate, looking at Kaiza. I'm Kaiza, the older man introduced himself, approaching Sakura. Nice to meet you, I'm your guide to Ishi. He added with a sweet smile and offered his hand to the young pink-haired Kunoichi. I'm Sakura, nice to meet you, she said, shaking the man's hand. Our guide, huh? She thought triumphantly. You're his personal doctor, right? The older man asked and received a nod from Sakura. And you must be Sasuke-san's wife, he asked, looking down at Naruto, who was staring at him with a very open interest. She got up and grinned. Yeah, I'm Naruto, nice to meet you too. Let the fun begin, she thought excitedly. Running into Kaiza meant the beginning for the mission. It was a small build-up before meeting the villagers and eventual members of that new organization. They would have to know things about Ishigakure and Iwakagore, so for them to get to know Kaiza was splendid. However, it was a matter of trust. If they messed up now, they'd most likely not be able to finish the mission after all. How are you feeling, Naruto-san? Sasuke-san told me earlier that you weren't feeling good? Kaiza asked, looking at Naruto's petite body where she was sitting, resting against a tree. She looked so young with her small body frame. Her blue eyes reminded him of dolls, and that most likely added to the effect of her being something fragile. A doll is something very diminutive. Feeling the man's calculating stare, Naruto chose to give him a little hint. She tugged a blonde lock behind her ear with her left hand, showing off the ring on her finger. Tsunade provided a set of matching rings to the married couple. They were made of white gold and were just a plain band, however, Naruto's had a small diamond molded into the band. They were simple, nothing fancy. It fit them. Yes, thank you, Kaiza-san. It was just sunstroke, I'm feeling better now. Thank you for asking, Naruto reassured the young man, offering him a fake shy smile, and looked away from him, focusing on a tree not too far away from them. I gave some fresh fish to your husband. This river flows from a jade's mine. It gives the fish a special taste. They're really delicious, you should try some, it will be good for you. Kaiza explained, glancing at the ring unintentionally, studying it. The blonde looked at Sasuke, then at the three innocent fish lying on the dirty ground just behind him. She suddenly felt her stomach flip. An acid taste flew up, followed by an ever more acid liquid. She put her hands on her mouth, prying that bad feeling to go away. She closed her eyes as she frowned and let her hand tighten around her mouth as she felt her gag reflexes make themselves known once again. Naruto, what's wrong? Sakura asked worriedly as she moved from her spot in front of the young woman and sat down next to her. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, and put his left hand on the blonde girl's back, and began to rub soothing circles. He wondered if the girl was acting or if it was real. 1 second the girl was fine, smiling and talking, and the second one quiet and looking bothered. Naruto felt the taste of the apples mixed with the gastric acid flowing up her throat at full speed. She swallowed the first wave of vomit but couldn't take it anymore. She threw up on the spot, coughing and spitting, which happened to be Sasuke's sandals. Naruto would have laughed her ass off if she wasn't feeling so sick. She closed her eyes and took deep breaths to calm her stomach. She was not aware of the perplexed raven next to her. The hell? The vomit victim couldn't believe what had just happened. The Dobi had thrown up on him. He looked down, and saw his feet drenched in a yellowish pool of vomit with partial digested pieces of apples. He was furious, yes, and if it wasn't for Kaiza's presence he would have killed that Dobi over and over again. Sakura's mind went blank. The situation was as scandalous as it was hilarious. She just blinked. What else could she have just done? She was brought back from her stupor as Naruto gagged and gulped several times over, trying not to throw up again. Are you okay? Holy, you got really bad sunstroke. It wasn't smart to travel in the middle of summer, Kaiza stated, looking worriedly at Naruto, and rushed over to her with a cloth. He let her wipe her mouth with it before he looks over at Sasuke, disgustingly. Something along the lines of, poor guy, was visible in his eyes. The sick Kunoichi looked down at Sasuke's feet, then up at his face. The sight was hilarious, but even a knucklehead like her knew when it was better to keep it down, so she simply smiled apologetically. I am so sorry, honey. I couldn't hold it down, please forgive me. She begged her husband for forgiveness, sending him her most innocent puppy eyes. She did look a bit pale and sweaty, but was quickly regaining her color, so the Uchiha didn't think too much about it. This made the young Uchiha's eye twitch. She had just ruined his sandals and she was now making fun of him? In Kaisa's head, the situation was not funny at all. He looked at the young couple suspiciously. Naruto's begging sounded like her husband was usually brutal and it made him wonder if the tall teen was abusive. He waited for Sasuke's reply to confirm his guess. "It's okay, Naru. Are you feeling better now?" was Sasuke's reply. "Calm down. Don't let the Dobi ruin the mission." He would never admit that Naruto wasn't the one on the verge of ruining the mission, but his self-control was. "Follow me, Naru. You need to clean yourself," Sakura said, rushing Naruto to the river, instead of letting things escalate between Sasuke and Naruto. "You too, Sasuke-kun," she added, looking back at her teammate. He sighed and nodded, then looked at the silent man looking at his teammates retreating back. "I think that her stomach can't handle the fish for now," he explained, taking off his sandals, with her being pregnant and all. "Yeah, I guess you're right, but I can't understand why fish would be bad for pregnant women. It's a lot of protein," the older man replied disbelievingly, following the young Uchiha to the river as well. He let Sasuke clean himself up, and in the meantime Kaiza summarized the whole situation to himself. The man was traveling far away from his homeland, accompanied by his very young and pregnant wife, and a doctor that seemed to be relatively young as well, who is also the man's cousin. What are they doing alone, without their parents, anyway? They must be running away from their village or something, he concluded, and studied the man before him whose sandals were now vomit-free but wet. "Are you feeling better now?" Sakura asked while Naruto was washing her face crouched down by the riverside. They were able to see Sasuke and Kaiza from there, but were far enough away from them to be able to talk freely. Naruto got up, taking a deep breath, and looked up at Sakura. Yeah, I'm better now," she replied with a tired voice. "I hate being sick. This whole vomiting thing is something I'd rather live without," she whined and closed her eyes as she sat back on the ground and lay a hand over her stomach. "When is it going to go away?" Poor girl, she didn't know that it was only the beginning, but at the same time, Tsunade didn't have to give her so many symptoms. She could have skipped the nauseous part, for example. Sakura smiled sadly and took a seat next to the blonde, who had regained her color completely. Pregnant women experience morning sicknesses. It doesn't mean that it only happens in the morning. It should stop in the second trimester of the pregnancy, but for some women it goes on till the end, the medic Nin explained professionally to the wide-eyed Kunoichi, who was now rubbing her stomach absent-mindedly as if trying to calm it. "You're kidding, right? I can't be sick for the upcoming 8 months. "No, but I'm sure it'll get better, don't worry." She tried to reassure her teammate, but it was futile. "The pills are working on your system. Everything should stabilize in few days, so there's really no need to worry." "Arg, I can't believe that I agreed to do this mission," she whispered the last couple of words. "Tell me what I should know. I have no clue about this kind of things. I thought pregnant women only have a huge belly, and give birth after 9 months, she said, and Sakura looked at her quizzically for a brief moment. "You do know how babies are made, don't you?" she finally asked, raising a curious eyebrow. After all, at the Ninja Academy they didn't really focus upon the human reproduction, they only had some brief talk about it. Besides, Naruto was never paid attention in class. However, the blonde only blushed upon hearing Sakura's question. "Of course I do," she shouted angrily, her blush covering more of her face. "I'm not stupid, you know," she added with an equally high voice. Sakura sighed as she heard this. Okay, don't yell, I heard you all right." Naruto only clicked her tongue and crossed her arms on her chest. "HMPH, you'd think I'd take this mission otherwise, huh?" she muttered under her breath. Sakura had no idea what she was talking about. "Okay, stop sulking like a child, and then I'll tell you about pregnancies," Sakura said, looking at her childish friend. "I'm not sulking," was the reply with a stomping foot to accentuate the words. "You should avoid FTHE types of food that makes you nauseous, since your body is rejecting it," Sakura began to explain. Kaiza wasn't with them, so it was safe to talk about the girl's condition. "If you feel tired, sick or have mood swings, it's normal, so don't worry. Also, don't exhaust yourself too much. No need to overdo it. Your mission is to make the villagers talk to you, that's all." Naruto nodded slowly. "I know, I just hope that I'm not going to be sick all the time." "Take it easy. especially the first couple of days. Okay, Sakura insisted. All right, the young girl answered and sighed. They headed back to their camp where the two men were waiting for them. Apparently they were having a conversation about something. Well, Kaiza was talking. Sasuke was only listening and whinnying every now and then. The young fisherman was explaining the extraordinary path of the river, and its curative effects on humans. Not really that interesting if you ask Sasuke, but better be nice or they'd most likely screw up. That's why I like to come fishing here. I'm sure that I have the best fish of the village, he finished grinning. The water here is really curative? Asked the medic nin approaching them. Oh, hello there Sakura-san, Naruto-san. Yes, especially for rheumatism, when the weather becomes warm enough. Lots of villagers come here to swim. Sick or not, it's great to relax here when it's hot outside. Actually, people from mostly Ishi hang out here every weekend during summer, the fisherman explained. Sasuke nodded. This was mentioned in Team 8's report, but the favorite spot of the villagers was supposed to be further down, on the other side of the river. I'd like to come back here to swim, Naruto confessed cheerfully as she sat down next to Sasuke. Sakura sitting down by Kaiza. Yeah, me too. It's a shame we didn't pack swimsuits, Sakura replied looking at Naruto significantly. First thing first, it was part of the plan to get close to the villagers and win their trust. They were not here on a vacation. They continued to talk some more, and then they decided to keep on moving. Sasuke finished packing their stuff lying on the ground, which basically were Naruto's sleeping bag, 2 bottles of water, and packages. Naruto approached her husband and helped him with the packing, while Sakura was taking care of her own belongings. So guys, are you going to stay in Ishi temporarily? Or are you planning to live here definitively? Kaiza asked, hoping to have his answers quickly, and they started to move again. We want to live here, Sasuke replied before Naruto could say anything. She glared at him. At least for a while. You live in Ishi, don't you? For how long? And what do you think about it? Is it good enough to raise kids? Naruto asked, eagerly pulling the wife act amazingly well. Her faked husband and faked cousin-in-law were absolutely stunned. If they didn't know her they would have believed that she was really planning on moving to Ishi to raise kids, as she had said. It's not only good, it's perfect. You'll see for yourself, you'll like it here, the older man replied proudly. I've been living there since 4 years approximately, the scenery is amazing. You'll also love the neighborhoods. That sounds great, I'd like a good neighborhood around. They can keep me watch the kids as well and… Sasuke was amazed to say the least. What the… is it really the Dobi speaking here? Didn't know she could be civilized and polite, he thought, not letting his surprise show on his face. Kaiza and Naruto continued to speak about Ishi and raising kids and having a family. It made both Sasuke and Sakura frown sadly, because soon they realized that the blonde was asking things she'd be wondering herself if she decided to look for a nice place and start a family. The conversation continued, and so did their journey. Follow me, my boat is this way. Kaiza yelled over the flood of people surrounding them, pointing at his left. We'll go to the docks. They are closer than the main gates, he said, and Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura followed him. They'd reached Iwa only a couple of minutes ago, and Naruto was amazed by the sheer size of the village. It was much bigger than Konoha. Thanks a lot Kaiza-san. The walk tired me a lot, the blonde girl thanked him politely. You're welcome, Naruto-san. The tan man answered and smiled at her. They followed him to his boat and took in the sight. It was a small embarkation, painted in white with dark brown spots where the paint was no longer covering the wood, showing them that it had been used for years. Kaiza hopped inside, and put his stuff under the small beams to make room for his guests. He helped Sakura and Naruto get on board, while Sasuke took their luggage. Said Raven took the spar oars and rowed along with the other male, following Kaiza's directions, but ignoring his excessive and useless talking. He was focused on cautiously analyzing their surroundings, but nothing was suspicious or felt out of place. It was a simple river passing through a forest. He glanced behind him and saw Naruto leaning on Sakura's side in the slightest. He frowned a little, but let it go as the pink-haired girl invited Naruto to put her head on her lap. You can put your head on my laps if you want to. You look really tired, she said with a small smile on her lips, her voice loud. Oh no, thanks Sakura-chan. The blonde girl replied with a pink hue coloring her cheeks. If only she was this kind with me for real, she thought and looked down sadly as she gulped. Sakura frowned, not really getting what was wrong with her friend, being tired and shy all the time. It was weird, no need to act for something as meaningless as resting. It wasn't part of the plan. Well, actually, they didn't set a definite plan about their act, but the blonde could keep on behaving as she normally would. No one was stopping her. "Come on, Naruto," she insisted, pulling her friend by her shoulders, laying the blonde head on her lap. "Oh, okay," she replied, feeling uncomfortable and slightly sad at the same time. Sakura was never this kind, and now she was being gentle just for the sake of the mission. Naruto sighed and closed her eyes. It felt great to be held close to a warm body. The only occasions when she had ever been embraced was when she either woke up from a coma or survived from a life or death situation, but it was usually followed by fussing, screaming and beating. She wondered for the nth time in her short life, how did it feel to be embraced by a mother? They say that mother's hugs are the best. She frowned again and turned her head towards Sakura's stomach, her nose slightly touching the fabric. She sighed as the slight rocking movements of the boat lulled her to sleep without further thoughts. The pink-haired girl looked down at her sleeping friend and smiled. The latter was clutching the white fabric of her skirt like a child would do with its mother. She pushed Naruto's blonde lock behind her ear and patted her head gently. A slight chuckle was heard which brought Sasuke to tear his eyes from his two teammates and look at the fisherman quizzically. "It's obvious that you're head over heels in love with her," Kaiza said as a matter of fact, and chuckled and tilted his head towards Naruto as Sasuke showed a look of confusion. "When did you two get married?" The young Uchiha was taken aback by the question and statement from the older man. He raised a refined eyebrow. Thought of how much of an idiot the man was for believing that he was in love with the Dobi, was rushing through the Raven's head. "It's been 3 months, he replied coolly, and kept rowing, not commenting about the head over heels in love part. He sighed mentally. The fisherman looked down at Naruto's sleeping figure, then at Sasuke. "She must be really tired. We will reach the docks in a couple of hours. You can rest if you want to. I'll wake you up later on." "No, it's okay," he insisted and shook his head briefly. "Alright then, your choice." The older man nodded and shrugged as he looked back at the two females, making sure they were doing well before focusing on the oars once more. The rest of the little trip was silent, and as promised, they reached the docks in about 3 hours later. Naruto had slept through the whole thing, missing the snack they'd all eaten. "Naruto," Sakura shook her friend slightly, and whispered. "We're in Ishi, wake up." Sun-kissed eyelids fluttered open, revealing 2 beautiful blue orbs. Kaiza almost forgot how to breathe. He wasn't into pedophilia or stealing someone else's wife, but truth be told, the young girl had the most beautiful eyes he had ever seen in his whole life. Sasuke saw the man staring and it oddly annoyed him a little. He felt himself sigh as he himself looked over at the sleeping blonde. "Wake up already," he ordered harshly. "Teme." Naruto was on her feet, awake and angry in a blink of an eye. The sleep was still evident in her eyes, but the anger was clearly visible behind said sleepiness. Trust Sasuke to piss her off in record time. "What the hell is your problem, anyway?" "No need to holler," she growled at him, trying to glare at him, but her out-of-bed features, husky voice, messy hair and sleep-clouded eyes were ruining her efforts to make the Uchiha regret his words. Kaiza blinked, not really registering what just happened. Naruto and Sasuke were arguing? They'd acted all lovey-dovey a couple of hours ago. He frowned a bit and hoped that their relationship wasn't an arranged one, because it sure looked like it for the moment. Sakura approached her blonde friend, and laughed nervously, looking at Kaiza. She put her hands on the girl's shoulders, and pushed her away from Sasuke. "Naruto-chan, please don't let your mood swings control your temper," Sakura half-hissed, half-advised in her friend's ear, and Naruto, being the sleepy, hormone-attacked female she was, didn't understand what the pinkette was getting at. "The hell, I have mood swings," shouted the angry girl and glared at Sakura, and Kaiza burst out laughing. Apparently he found the entire thing amusing. "Not a morning person, I presume," Kaiza said, still laughing, his grin stretching over his face. Naruto looked at him and then it hit her. "We're on a mission. Damn, I forgot. Hee, sorry about that," she apologized, rubbing the back of her head and blushing cutely. Sakura sighed in relief as she noticed the blonde had finally understood what was going on. The older man shook his head, smiling, as if waving the entire thing off. "Follow me. We have to go to the reception desk first." Reception desk? Sakura asked with an arched brow. Sasuke looked just as confused. The ones back at home had only talked about the checkpoint at the main gate. Yes, visitors must report there to have a pass to stay in the village. Don't worry, it's just a formality to be sure that people here are not dangerous, he replied, smiling reassuringly. It's for the safety of the people living here. That's very reassuring, Naruto said, smiling, and put a hand on her stomach, letting her fingertips touch it briefly. Yeah, he said, taking Sakura's luggage out of the boat. Sasuke was taking care of his and Naruto's. I guess it's a good thing to know, since you're planning on raising the kids here. He'd obviously noticed the blonde's gesture. Naruto smiled. The docks were empty, different boats of different sizes and shapes were parked along the bridge. Some were used for fishing, it was easy to guess, judging by the fishing nets hanging near the boats. Other boats looked like they were used for importation and/or exportation. Are they used to bring weapons or mercenaries? The three ninjas wondered, sharing the same knowing look discreetly. We should find a friend of mine there, the fisherman added, pointing at the end of the bridge where some huts were located, along with a few stores. He was pointing at a small hut painted in a pale blue color with a white roof. It was standing at the right corner of the bridge, had a small window with white shutters barely hanging, and had a small table with 2 chairs near its door. The hut didn't look out of place at all, strangely enough, with the shining sun above it, the white sand at its bottom, a mix of dark green and brown of the high cliff behind it. The little shelter, or whatever it was supposed to be, looked like it was the very definition of peace. The only noise that could be heard was Mother Nature's harmonious voice, the sound of the waves, the gulls' songs. The little wind made the shutter's hut hit its wall rhythmically. However, all of this only screamed peace and loneliness even louder. A man came out the hut and looked at Kaiza while polishing his glasses. He studied the tan man and then turned his gaze towards the newcomers, and once again at Kaiza. He put his glasses back on and titled his head to the side with a smile grazing his lips. Hey Tazuna, you still have nothing better to do than hiding in there? The fisherman shouted, approaching his friend with a huge smile on his lips. Oh, shut up. You should feel honored to have someone welcome you when you're here in Ishi. Not everyone wants to see your face, you know. It's not that pretty, the man retorted back and smiled just as much. I resent that, old man. As if you were waiting for me to come back, Kaiza replied, chuckling. They were now facing each other, with the members of Team 7 standing behind the fisherman, feeling out of place. That's not really the kind of fish I was expecting you to catch, the man stated, pointing at the newcomers with a raised eyebrow. Oh sorry, I forgot to introduce you. Kaiza apologized, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly as he turned to the 3 youngsters. Tazuna, this is Sasuke-san, he said, pointing at Sasuke, who nodded politely. Naruto-san, his wife, the blonde, smiled politely, and Sakura-san, his cousin. The 2 girls bowed politely at the same time, and Tazuna nodded slowly. And everyone, this is Tazuna, my soon-to-be father-in-law, he finished, grinning, his face becoming a shade darker due to excitement. It's not common to have newcomers here. What business brings you here? Tazuna asked upon exchanging polite greetings. We're planning to live here, Sasuke replied courtly and bowed slightly. Tazuna held a suspicious look on his face, and it made the raven-haired ninja wonder if the man was their enemy or not. His appearance was innocent and totally harmless. He was old, maybe 60 or 70, tall, very well built for his age, tan, and he had dark brown eyes. His hair was gray, as was his beard and mustache. His clothing was a simple dark brown shirt with white pants, using a rope to keep them up, and the thin glasses on his nose gave him a serious and smart look. But the effect was ruined by the little blush on his cheeks and the faint smell of alcohol. The man was drunk, but not wasted. Naruto-san is pregnant and they want to raise their kids here, Kaiza added to clarify things for his father-in-law. Can you lend me your carriage? They are tired and the reception desk is still far away from here. I'd like to get there before it gets too dark. Kaiza looked up at the sky and then down at the long shadows on the ground. The sun was about to set. I'm coming with you. There is no way I'll let you drive without me, the old man replied as he nodded. What is that supposed to mean, you old man? Stop calling me that, and I'm doing this since I'm one to learn from my mistakes. I resent that too. While Tazuna and Kaiza were sitting at the front, the 3 newcomers were in the back of the carriage. They took their time to explore the village of stone with their eyes. It sure was a different sight in comparison to Konoha. It was a typical village actually, if you judged it from the inhabitants. Different shops of different businesses along the streets. Villagers pouring at every direction. Some children running and playing around, some others, gawking in front of candy shops. It felt welcoming and safe, except for the fact that everyone was looking at them with curiosity. They really weren't used to foreigners, and whispers could be heard in every street they passed by. Quite frankly, it was starting to get on their nerves, but they could understand it all the same. Since Ishi was quite an isolated village, tourists and people from the outside were not seen all too often. However, after 20 minutes, they finally reached the reception desk. It was a 3-story building, surrounded by a well-maintained garden. A big plaque was hanging at the top with the words, "Welcome to Ishi," written in gold characters. Simple but exquisite. Once inside, they were greeted by a young receptionist who bowed at them politely, and invited them to sit and wait in the waiting room. She even offered some tea but they declined. A bulky man took their luggage and disappeared in the corridor. The receptionist quickly explained that it was for security measure to check strangers' bags. It made Naruto's left eye twitch. Why couldn't they be there as they executed this procedure? "Kaiza-san, follow me please," the young woman finally said. Kaiza complied and took a seat by her desk, which was located across the waiting room. The man was obviously answering her questions about the 3 visitors, and every detail was written down by his interviewer. The 3 shinobi narrowed their eyes as they took in the kind of surveillance they had in the village. They'd have to be careful. However, this was nothing unpredictable. Team 8 went through the same treatment. A middle-aged man approached the 3 ninjas and gave them a form to fill. They put their personal information, such as their names, original village, jobs and so on the paper. They also had to fill in questions about ninjas and their knowledge about it. When they finished, the man took the forms and gave them to the receptionist who immediately took a quick look at them. Naruto's was the one on top, and Sasuke noticed how the woman smiled slightly as she read it. It was apparently about the pregnant question. Naruto and Sakura had to fill in a question about whether or not they'd ever been pregnant with a child. At the end of Kaiza's interview, the young woman took the newly created file about the 3 strangers and headed down the corridor. The fisherman stayed at her desk, while Tazuna was keeping a not-so-discreet watchful eye on Team 7. Everyone was careful as to who they were it seemed. 5 minutes later, 2 men wearing suits showed up, accompanied by the young receptionist. "Welcome to Ishi," the shorter man greeted the 3 ninjas cheerfully. "My name is Gato. I'm in charge of the ins and outs of the village. Please follow me. We'll discuss some matters more comfortably in my office." Team 7 followed him with faked polite smiles and bows. Gato's office was spacious and very sophisticated. The amount of books the man possessed was impressive, but they hardly believed that he had really read them all. He didn't have a smart look to be honest. He was bold and very short, and didn't seem too old, maybe 45, little less or more. "Yuhi-kun." Gato looked down at the file in hands and then up at Sasuke. "Yuhi Sasuke-kun," he asked and got a polite nod as an acknowledgement from the Raven. "And your wife Yuhi Naruto-san, and cousin Yuhi Sakura-san," he added. The 2 girls smiled, although it felt weird to be called wife for Naruto. She was still trying to get used to it and it was a bit hard, to be honest. "You're from the ninja village Konoha." It wasn't a question, it was a statement, so no one bothered to reply, waiting for the man to ask what he wanted to know. "So you're ninjas, right?" he asked and looked at Sasuke, and then Sakura, not bothering to look at the blonde. It made Naruto frown. "I was at the ninja academy because of my parents but refused to work as such. I graduated, but never went further than that," Sasuke replied, locking eyes with Gato. "Do you have a problem with that?" he harshly added, glaring at the old man, but it still held a polite tone to it. "No, I do not," Gato chuckled and looked down at the file once more. "Not at all actually. But why did you refuse to be a ninja?" "I don't want to fight and lose my life for cowards," was the Raven ninja's cool reply. Gato smiled at his reply, clearly pleased by the young man's behavior and answer. "And what about you two?" he asked, looking at Naruto and Sakura. "You've got to have some ninja training as well," he stated and lifted an eyebrow at Sakura, who was about to answer the man's question. "I followed a medic nin training but worked in the hospital for less than 1 year actually," the pink-haired Kunoichi said. "I was wondering if it could be possible to work here as a doctor or a nurse, I want to help people, it's very important to me. That's really nice of you, I think that we can do that, the old man said, and then he let his eyes wander to Naruto, who was standing on Sasuke's right side. And you then, Yuhi-san? I'm not a ninja and I'm not planning to be one, the blonde answered with a smile. I just want to raise my child in peace, Naruto replied, caressing her flat belly. She looked so genuine that it was disturbing for her two teammates. You're right, children need their parents, like Yuhi-kun here said, dying for cowards is not worthy. But please enlighten me, how come you're traveling while you're pregnant? And what was your family's reaction? Gato's questions were disturbing, and Sasuke could feel Naruto taking a deep breath before answering. They let us go, it was hard to convince them at the beginning, but they understood our wish to live in a peaceful village, Sakura replied before Naruto could make a sound. The blonde looked over at her. Since I'm a doctor, Auntie asked me to come and take care of Naruto and I said yes. I understand, Gato said, writing some notes in their file. Suddenly, a knock was heard, and the middle-aged man from earlier came in. He approached Gato and whispered something in his ear. Gato nodded and thanked the other man, who left the office as fast as he came. You can stay, but we don't have available rooms in our hotel. You're going to stay at Tazuna's, he already agreed. Is it okay with you? The old man offered. It was obviously a way to keep watch over the newcomers. They gave a good impression, but it wasn't enough to win their trust. They still have time and plans up their sleeves, and the beginning of an infiltration was still likely. Oh, but we don't want to disturb anyone, Naruto replied, but Gato interrupted her. Don't be silly, we're not going to let you stay in the streets, and Tazuna already agreed. I think that we don't have another option, Sakura said and smiled at the blonde. Thank you very much. Hopefully, a room will be released very soon. Yes, yes. Here are your passes, the old man said, handing 3 cards to Team 7's members. I hope you'll find the village comfortable. It was sunset when Team 7 reached Tazuna's house, their new home. The house wasn't big, but neither was it small. It was a 2-floor house painted in a cream color with a brown roof made out of rectangular tiles. 2 long flower pots were located at each side of the front door along the walls, where beautiful red and white roses were planted. There was a small goal cage to play soccer at their right, and a swing and doghouse at their left. There was no dog in sight. They must have kids in the house, maybe a little boy, Naruto thought, smiling brightly. At least their stay wouldn't be boring if there are little kids running around. The neighbors were all staring at them from their windows and doors. Some others stood erect in their garden to observe them shamelessly. Most of them were curious and a few others were suspicious. It was overly clear on their faces. Sasuke felt a cold chill on his back and turned around to meet a young man glaring at him. The Uchiha glared back, succeeding to scare his neighbor. Don't mind him. He acts this way whenever a young and handsome man crosses his path. He believes that he's the best-looking guy in the neighborhood, Tazuna lazily replied, looking at the furious young man slamming his door noisily. Sasuke raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. He didn't believe that justification anyway. The guy was furious, but it didn't look like mere rivalry. Something was up, and he was sure that it was related to their mission. He needed to talk with that man. Guys are so stupid sometimes, Naruto muttered, looking at the strange guy's house, then turned back to Tazuna and complimented him with, "You have a beautiful garden." "Thanks, my daughter likes flowers. She insisted on planting roses when we bought this house," the old man replied, opening the door. "Come on in," he invited his guests inside, holding the door wide open. The 3 ninjas looked at each other, sharing the same thought. They were going to live in that house for a while, compelled to be followed and spied on 24/7. Their act must be perfect, especially Naruto's. To say the truth, Sasuke and Sakura trusted their blonde teammate when it came to their normal missions, but for this infiltration, they were not very reassured, and so they had planned to do their best in order to prevent Naruto's disastrous, but way too usual, slip of tongue. Tazuna was not a talkative person, and Sasuke was very grateful for that. They were going to stay with quiet people, and that was something important for the young Uchiha, or Yuhi, his new last name. He and his 2 teammates were settled in the old man's living room, sipping silently on a tea too sweet for his liking, made by the old man's daughter. The long silence was starting to get suffocating for everyone in the room. "Thank you for your hospitality, Tazuna-san, Tsunami-san." Sakura broke the silence by the usual polite, "Thank you." admiring the beautiful combination of the white and peach color in the living room. The curtains were an immaculate white color with a second pair of silky peach curtains over them. The pinkette looked down to her teacup and noticed the same color tone with the white couch and peach cushions. Even the flowers were white. A bouquet of jasmines disposed on the coffee table. Their perfume was strong but gentle at the same time. It gave Sakura the impression to be in the middle of a jasmine's field. The design was of a good taste. Tsunami must be a perfect housewife, she thought. Oh, it's nothing, it's a pleasure to meet new people. It's quite boring here sometimes, Tazuna's daughter kindly replied, a small smile gracing her lips. She put her empty cup on the coffee table, and started filling Naruto's a second time. Tsunami was very gentle, she reminded Sasuke of his mother. She was a beautiful woman with a sweet and comforting voice, endowed with a flawless skin, dark bluish hair and eyes, and had the same graceful aura as his mother. It was kind of disturbing for the Raven, to say the least. Thanks. Everyone keeps telling us that people here are not used to foreigners. It's strange, Naruto commented, taking the offered cup as she slid slowly to the edge of the couch. Yes, Ishi was never a touristic village, Tsunami replied, and then added. I heard from Dad that you want to live here. Guess I should say, welcome to Ishigakure, then. Let me show you around, she said with a smile and got up from her position on the couch, followed by the three guests. Before going further into the hallway, she turned back to her father and asked, Dad, could you go to the kitchen and check the dinner, please? It's still on the stove but I think it's almost ready. Tazuna stood up sighing heavily, then nodded and did as told. Naruto's nostrils perked up at the watering smell coming from the kitchen, and her stomach growled loudly, making everyone in the room look back at her. She rubbed the back of her head, blushing deeply, and looked down at the white carpet. Sorry, she apologized, kicking herself mentally. Now I'm going to look like a pig, only good for eating. The woman giggled, very amused by the young lady's antiques. She liked the idea of housing these strangers even more for every second passing. Her routine was finally going to be broken, and she was delighted. It's okay, she reassured the blonde girl, smiling like a mother would do with her daughter. Then, she approached her and crouched down, taking a piece of pottery, and filled it with some cookies served earlier to accompany the tea. Here, she said, handing the handmade cookie jar to Naruto. Hopefully, it'll soothe your hunger until dinner's ready. Naruto took the cookies, face flushed and unable to lock eyes with Tsunami's. Her heart missed a beat at the sight of her gentle smile. All these kind intentions were starting to make the blue-eyed girl feel anxious. This mission was harder than what she'd expected, which made her start to doubt her abilities in keeping up her cover. Thanks, she thanked her host, looking at the cookies like they were a precious present. Sasuke and Sakura watched the whole interaction carefully. They still didn't understand Naruto's behavior, even though Sakura was starting to guess what was bothering her friend. You're welcome, please make yourself feel at home, Tsunami added, very pleased by Naruto's shyness, and started to show them around. So here is the living room and the kitchen is in the opposite direction. Let's go upstairs to show you your rooms. Your bags have already been taken care of, she said, pointing at the nicely varnished staircase, whose steps were covered by a thin white carpet. The house wasn't big or impressive but nice and tidy. A small living room and spacious kitchen in the first floor. A vast bathroom and 4 bedrooms in the second floor. This is Dad's room, she said, pointing at the first door at their left once they reached the second floor. He snores sometimes, so don't be scared if you hear some noises during the night, she whispered, chuckling. And, this is my room, she said, pointing at the first door at their right. Since we don't have enough rooms, you're going to stay here, Naruto-san and Sasuke-san. Oh no, you don't have to leave your room. Naruto tried to change the woman's mind but to no avail. This is your room for the meantime, don't refuse or I will feel offended, Tsunami replied authoritatively, but with a small smile. But, the blonde tried once again to get the other woman to change her mind. No buts. And it was enough to make Naruto submit docilely to her host. Her teammates watched her trying to imitate a fish out of her little pond. She couldn't form a coherent sentence, which was very unusual for their stubborn teammate. Alright then, thank you very much, Tsunami-san. Sasuke finally thanked their host, nodding respectfully. The room looked so small. The big bed left almost no room to move in there. It was a ludicrous 4-poster bed, with white transparent curtains hanging on both sides of the bed, covered by wine-red silky sheets. The Raven Ninja couldn't help but wonder how Naruto would look buried in that luxurious bedding. He suddenly felt something warm form in the pit of his stomach, but ignored it. He swallowed the imaginary lump stuck in his throat, and looked back at Tsunami-san without letting out his uneasiness and hesitation. "Sakura-san, you'll take the guest room, it's a bit small, I hope you don't mind." Tsunami apologized, opening the second door at their left. "Thank you, it's perfect," the pink-haired girl said, smiling. The room was very simple, a small bed in the middle of the room, an empty study by the window, an impressive set of bookshelves facing the bed and a closet by the entree. "It was my husband's study. I turned it into a guest room but kept his books," she said, pointing at the bookshelves. The three ninjas sensed a tone of sadness in her voice, and exchanged quizzical looks but didn't say anything. "It's all right, plus I love reading. Can I take a look at the books?" Sakura asked, wondering why she had used the past tense speaking about Kaiza. "Yes, of course, but most of them are architecture books," Tsunami replied, and then noticed her guest's quizzical looks. "I thought that Kaiza was a fisherman?" Naruto quickly asked. She didn't think that Kaiza was intellectual. That doesn't mean that she had considered him as an idiot, but supposed that fishing was his only field. "Kaiza is not my husband, we are engaged but not married yet," the older woman explained. "I was married before I met Kaiza. He died when I was pregnant 5 years ago," she looked down mindlessly. "I'm sorry to hear that, Tsunami-san," Naruto said, putting her right hand on Tsunami's shoulder to comfort her. "Oh, it's in the past now," Tsunami said, offering a reassuring smile to Naruto, then looked back at the hallway to continue the little tour. "This is Inari's room, my son, and I'll be staying in his room," she said, pointing at the second door at their right, then at the door at their left. "This is the bathroom. The last room beside my son's is my atelier. I'm a dressmaker, hope you won't mind the sound of the sewing machine." "You sew? Wow. Could you teach me please? I have always wanted to learn stuff like that. I can never find enough orange clothes." You should have guessed who was talking by now. It was Naruto, of course. Both Sakura and Sasuke arched a brow at this. "Sure," she said, chuckling, then concluded. "Well, that's our humble residence. It's really nice, Tsunami-san." The pinkette complimented, looking at the lilacs bouquet rested on the commode between Tsunami and her son's room. "Thank you, please wait for me downstairs, I'm going to change the sheets, I'll be quick." They went downstairs, and headed to the living room where Tazuna was waiting for them. A young boy suddenly stormed into the house, slamming the door behind him and shouting, "I'm home, Tilda." He ran into the house, not looking where he was going, hence dumped into Sasuke and landed gracelessly on his butt. "Who the hell are you?" the newcomer shouted fearlessly, ready to break the man's nose, even though said man was 3 times taller than him, as if he was able to take him down. Sasuke raised a refined eyebrow, and looked down at the little boy at his feet. He guessed that he was Tsunami's son. He wasn't as pale as his mother but had the same eyes. His hair was dark brown, half hidden by a big white hat. His white shirt and dark green overalls were dirty with mud. He looked like a disrespectful brat. "Hey Inari, don't be rude, they are our guests," Tazuna said while helping his grandson to stand up. "You mean the strangers that everyone is talking about?" the young boy asked his grandfather, eyes as wide as saucer plates. "Yes," the old man replied, sighing. "Now, don't be rude and say sorry." "Sorry, I didn't see where I was going," Inari said, bowing slightly, then stood up, rubbing the back of his head, and offered a half-splitting grin, his eyes taking a half-moon shape. Sasuke hn'd, "Maybe he's not that disrespectful. You must be Inari," Naruto asked, crouching down to Inari's level. The young boy looked up and saw Naruto's smiling face. "She is so cute," he thought, blushing. "Why yes, I'm Inari," he replied, smiling, looked down quickly after meeting the young lady's eyes, and started fidgeting with the buttons on his overalls. "I'm Naruto," she introduced herself, taking the boy's hand and shook it like he was a grown-up, which pleased her interlocutor very much. "The brooding guy over there is Sasuke, and the pinkhead is Sakura-chan," she added, pointing at each one of them. Inari grinned. "Now, Inari, go upstairs, and take a bath before your mother sees you," Tazuna interrupted, rushing the young boy upstairs. "Dinner is ready. You must be really hungry," the old man invited, heading to the kitchen without waiting for his guests to follow him. "Aren't we going to wait for Tsunami-san and Inari-kun?" Sakura asked, looking behind her to check if any one of them was joining them. They'll be back in few minutes. Let's set the table, Tazuna said, opening the fridge's door and taking a water bottle and some orange juice. They heard a loud ding and all looked up at the top of the kitchen's entry. There was a big round clock, with shining silver numbers and hands which read exactly 8 o'clock. Tazuna showed them the location of everything they could need: tea, sugar, salt, etc. Once they finished setting the table, they were able to find most supplies in the kitchen without having to ask their hosts. They ended up talking about the best fruits and vegetables of the season, and some recipes the old man liked to try when he felt like cooking. "Oh, that's great, everything is ready." They all looked at the kitchen doors to find Tsunami and her son Inari standing. "Don't tell me that you were waiting for us? We have just finished actually," Sakura replied, folding the dish towel hanging on the chair beside her. Dinner was faithful to the very image of the perfect housewife given by Tsunami since Team 7 entered the house. It was a vegetarian dish, rich in protein, some rice with dash, a broth made of kombu seaweed, and some tofu with shiitake mushroom. The cordon bleu was mentally glad with her choice of menu. It was a well-balanced dinner for the pregnant girl, hopefully light enough to spare her from nausea symptoms. It's delicious, Tsunami-san," the blonde complimented, after gulping down the first bit of her food. She was doing her best to keep her manners, but it was evident that she was very hungry, not to mention loved the food before her. "Thanks, I'm glad that you like it," the host replied, smiling. "So, you're going to live with us forever?" Inari asked Naruto with a sing-song voice and hope-filled eyes. He was very excited, couldn't even sit still in his chair. He kept on balancing his feet under the table and playing with his food. "Oh no, not forever, we're staying here until a room is available at the hotel," Naruto replied, very amused by the little boy's eagerness. "Oh," he looked down sadly, putting down his chopsticks. Everyone exchanged sad looks, except Tazuna, who was too busy gulping down his dinner to notice his grandson's disappointment. At least, that was what Team Sever thought, until the old man spoke. "I'm sure that after a few months of hard work they'll be able to buy Ri's house," Tazuna said, not even looking up at his guests, and then he resumed to eat without waiting for them to reply. "It would be so cool. We'll become neighbors." The boy perked up instantly, causing Sakura and Naruto to chuckle. "Which house are you talking about?" Sasuke asked, very interested by this suggestion. "It's the one facing the park," Tsunami replied evenly. "Is it for sale or rent?" the Raven asked once more. The sooner they got out from Tazuna's house, the better. They needed space and privacy. "For sale," she replied, then added. "The price is reasonable, and no one is planning to buy it. I'm sure that you won't have any problem to make the deal." Sasuke nodded before asking, "Tazuna-san, do you know anyone hiring right now? You can help Kaizo with fishing if you want. We will visit some friends of mine tomorrow, there we can see if they have something better for you," the old man replied, sipping his sake quietly. "Thank you, Tazuna-san," the Raven nodded his thanks. "I heard that you're probably going to work at the hospital, Sakura-san," the old man said, looking at the pinkhead, who nodded after putting down her cup of water. "That's great. Tomorrow I'll show you around the village, and we can stop at the hospital. Oh, and Naruto-san? You should see a doctor to check if everything is okay. Your trip was long and very tiring," Tsunami suggested, looking at the blonde worriedly. "Oh, no, I'm perfectly fine, and I already have Sakura-chan. She's a great doctor, you know. I'm sure that everybody here will love her," Naruto finished with a splitting grin on her face and a pink hue on her cheeks. She didn't feel at ease at all when they talked about her condition. "I hope that I'm going to get used to these kinds of questions." "Why, are you sick, Naruto-chan?" little Inari quickly asked. The idea of their blonde guest hurt and suffering pained him deeply. She looked so kind and gentle. Like an angel, he thought, looking at her deep blue eyes and blonde hair. No, don't worry, Inari-kun. I'm fine," said Angel replied, chuckling slightly. "So you don't worry. But why did you ask if she needed to see a doctor, Mom?" the clever boy asked his mother. "Naruto-san is going to have a baby soon," his mother explained, but the boy didn't understand and only blinked twice before asking more questions. "Really? But why did she need a doctor?" was the first one. "Inari, don't worry. Your mom was only making sure that she was fine after walking for so long," his grandfather interrupted the endless interrogation. Most likely having hopes in stopping the conversation, for the night at least. He didn't want to discuss the birds and bees just yet, with his grandchild. Okay. The youngest in the group nodded, pleased by his mother's good intentions towards his angel. Go to your room now, I'll be there in 10 minutes tops, his mother ordered after looking at the clock. It was almost 9 o'clock, the time to go to bed for the little boy. Okay, Inari said one more and bounced out of his chair before wishing a good night to their guests, then stormed out of the kitchen and run up the stairs. Inari, don't run in the house. His mom shouted, glaring at the ceiling as if it was going to make her voice grow even louder. Sorry mom, was Inari's quick reply, followed by a complete silence that pleased the young mother, judging by her little smile. Go to rest, I'll take care of the kitchen, Tsunami suggested and started to clear the table. Their guests nodded and rose from the table. Good night, Tazuna quickly said, slipping out of the kitchen. Thanks, good night then. Naru-chan, the only raven ninja in the room, said, looking at his blonde teammate. Oh, go on, I want to stay with Tsunami-san, Naruto said, pouting. No, you're tired, more sluggish than before. You need to rest, Sasuke spoke with a cold voice, staring at his stubborn teammate. They needed to talk about their plan, they were going to be separated tomorrow, and instead of getting the hint, she was being her oblivious and stubborn self, insisting on staying with their host to chat a little. I'm not tired, she insisted, crossing her arms on her chest, and glared back at her husband. Go to sleep if you want, I'm not following you. Baby is the stupidest nickname I've ever heard, Sakura interrupted the quarreling duo, laughing nervously. Don't you think, Tsunami-san? Overused, you know, she said, wondering if she had managed to hide Naruto's slip of tongue. The older woman blinked, then chuckled, looking back at Sakura. No, I think it's cute. It worked, Sakura sighed mentally. She couldn't believe Naruto's carelessness. She needs to think before opening her stupid mouth. Sakura looked at her teammates to find Sasuke glaring at her with what she believed to be a pink hue on his cheeks, and Naruto blushing slightly. She quickly lowered her eyes when she met the pinkette's accusing eyes. You should listen to your husband, Naruto-chan, Tsunami advised, then started to wash the dishes. The cookies are in the cupboard if you ever want to eat something sweet tonight, and I'll leave the apples on the table. Thanks, Naruto bowed, blushing. I'll go to bed after using the bathroom. Why, of course. Good night, then, the older woman wished, resuming her chores. Good night, Naruto said, then followed Sasuke out of the kitchen. The fake couple climbed up the stairs in silence. It felt awkward to be together without exchanging insults or fighting. Sasuke got in the room first, and then stopped looking at that ridiculous bed. The annoying feeling in the pit of his stomach was back. The click of the door closing behind him brought him out of his uneasiness. He turned around to face his teammate. She was still looking down at the floor, ignoring him as she walked straight to her backpack lying under the window. She crouched down to pick out her night clothes. Sasuke sighed and said quietly, think before talking, Dobi. Naruto instantly turned around to face him, and glare at him furiously. Don't insult me, Teme. Don't shout, I can hear you perfectly fine. Do you want Tazuna to hear us? He hissed, glaring at her once more. She pouted and started shuffling through her bag, angrily whispering, You're a real bastard. That would be it, baby, wouldn't it? The Raven mocked before inspecting the room with his Sharingan, then concluded. The room is safe. I don't think that they're stupid enough to hide bombs and blow up their own house in smithereens, the blonde-haired Kunoichi replied sarcastically. I'm talking about cameras or microphones, he corrected harshly, dropping the insult to spare himself from his teammate's outburst and an eventual headache. Naruto sighed loudly, rubbing the bridge of her nose, then ruffled her bangs. I'm going to take a shower, she said, and received a nod from Sasuke as an acknowledgement. When she was out of the room, Sasuke looked back at that disturbing bed. He sighed. Sakura stayed with their host, stating that she had nothing else to do while Naruto was in the bathroom. They didn't talk much, and went upstairs as soon as they had finished. The water was running in the bathroom, confirming that Naruto was still there. Sakura went to her room while Tsunami went to her son's. She closed the door, and then sat on her bed looking cautiously around her. Nothing seemed to be out of place. She inspected the room more carefully, and once she confirmed that the room was safe, she went to her teammate's room to talk with Sasuke. I think that the hormones are making her moody, she always had a bad temper, now it's going to be worse, was the first thing Sakura said as she entered. I'll see if I can prepare something to calm her temper. It would be great. Based on Team 8's report, the villagers are not going to tolerate and respect a tomboy. He was interrupted by the clicking of the door when Naruto walked in the room. I heard you, she stated sternly, and started rubbing her hair furiously with the white fluffy towel around her shoulders. Their continuous comments about her were starting to seriously get on her nerves. Plus, a small side of her was hurt. Sakura looked at her Raven teammate, then at Naruto. Naruto, it's the pills, they are making you abnormally moody. I'll try to find a solution to get rid of this side effects. Really? I would really appreciate it, she said yawning, and threw the towel carelessly on the floor. You have to stop the insults, Naruto, the pinkette reprimanded once again and turned to Sasuke. I know. But you could have come up with something better than, baby, the blonde girl replied, quoting the nickname with her hands. Sorry, it was the first thing that came up to my mind and starts with a, B. The pinkette glared. Don't take your pills today, okay? The blonde nodded, pulling her pills out of her bag, and placed them in the drawer of the nightstand beside her. How are you feeling? Sakura asked, approaching the blonde. I'm fine, just tired, that's all, she replied, yawning again. If you don't have anything important to say, Sakura, I'll go take a shower as well, Sasuke asked, waiting for her teammate to reply. So far everything was going smoothly. If only the Dobi could be more careful, things would be even better. When Sasuke was out of the room, Sakura went to examine the blonde. Everything was fine aside from her slightly high blood pressure, but it was to be expected. Everything is fine, the medic Nin concluded, smiling. Told you, the blonde yawned again. Your hair is still wet, you know, Sakura said, pointing at her teammate's hair cascading down her shoulders, and ended up lying gracefully on the red silky sheets. Naruto looked like an angel, very feminine and beautiful. She even managed to make her white t-shirt and orange sweatpants look feminine. Sakura picked up the towel thrown earlier on the ground, and threw it back at Naruto. Dry your hair, or you'll catch a cold. Oh please, Sakura-chan, I let them dry up by themselves since forever. Besides, I never get sick, remember, she finished, pointing down at her stomach, hinting about the seal. Sakura sighed, shaking her head slightly. That doesn't mean that you don't have to learn good habits. Oh well, good night then. Good night, Sakura-chan, the blonde said, grinning, and threw the towel on the ground for the second time that night. Sakura exited the room, noting that the water was off in the shower. She went to her room and prepared her nightgown. When she heard the door of her teammate's room opening then closing, she guessed that it was now her turn to clean herself up, and went to the bathroom, locking the door behind her. Apparently, Sasuke had forgotten his clothes and went to his room with nothing else than a towel on his back. Naruto was making herself comfortable in the bed. She had decided that she was going to take the bed while the Teme could find a spot on the ground to sleep on. There was no way for her to share a bed with that asshole. She had found a comfortable position, the lights were off, and absolute silence reigned in the room. Eyelids were starting to grow heavier, and then someone opened the door harshly. What the hell? I was sleeping, Teme. She didn't have to think twice to identify the culprit. Only one asshole in the world was good at annoying her, anytime and anywhere. Quiet, Dobi, said, Teme hissed back. Naruto sighed, then switched the lights on. She looked back at her teammate, then blinked once, twice. The hell, Teme? Put some clothes on for fuck's sake. She closed her eyes and buried her face in the sheets. Sasuke rolled his eyes, and went to his backpack to take out his clothes. He was about to go back to the bathroom to change when he heard the water running. What are you waiting for, asshole? Naruto asked impatiently, and then blinked when she understood why Sasuke was still in the room. Great, just great. You better not do anything disgusting, she said, turning her back to Sasuke, and threw the sheets over her head. What are you talking about, Dobi? Sasuke asked indignantly, a vein pulsing on his forehead. Don't know, but I do know that I have a naked guy behind me, so you better watch out, was the blonde's muffled reply. Sasuke smirked, very amused. Don't worry, Dobi, I'm not attracted to you. I won't try anything. Besides, I'm not gay. It took her 3 seconds to register what the Raven had said. The hell, you asshole? What is that supposed to mean? She hissed, sitting up on the bed, and glared at him furiously. Do you know what privacy means? He asked haughtily with a raised eyebrow. He was only in boxers, his sweatpants halfway up. Stupid, Teme, she muttered, blushing, and threw back the sheets over her head. 2 minutes later, the lights went off, and Naruto felt the sheets being lifted and someone sliding in the bed beside her. She turned around to find Sasuke's bare back. She glared and switched on the lights again. "What do you think you're doing?" she asked, plopping herself on her elbow, then brushed off the bangs covering her eyes to give more room to her glare. "Sleeping," the Raven replied without facing his teammate. "I take the bed, you find somewhere else to sleep," she stated. There was no room for arguments. "I'm not sleeping on the ground, and we're married. We're supposed to sleep together." He stopped, realizing the suggestive words he had just uttered. He was glad to have his back facing Naruto. "Arg, all right, but don't sprawl to my side of the bed," she said after regaining her composure. "This is my side," she added, pointing harshly at her side, and accentuating every word. The Raven didn't reply. He was tired and his teammate was consuming the last bit of energy left in him with her stupidity. Said teammate then switched off the lights and went back to sleep. For a couple of minutes, she kept on tossing and turning to find the most comfortable position to sleep. As annoying as it was, Sasuke stayed silent nonetheless. He knew that talking wouldn't make things better, and waited for her to fall asleep. When she stilled, he exhaled and inhaled slowly to release his stress. He was just about to fall asleep himself when he remembered that weird guy who had glared at him when he came up to Tazuna's house. He'd seemed young, strong and had an aura that reeked of potential of becoming protective of his village. Maybe he was a member of the organization he and his teammates are trying to catch. When he felt the stress of the mission take control of his emotions, he started to summarize their plan. He thought about the questions he'd have to ask, and the places he'd have to visit to learn more about the village. A couple of minutes later, he was finally asleep.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thanks.